Worth a watch. Like, the guy does really well.
Okay, I'll watch it just for you, Lycan, okay?
And the left takes the...
Oh, no. Oh, Lance, don't let him get away with that.
Okay, so if someone dies by a gun, are they being shot? Were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it a suicide?
Oh, no, Lance.
One of the reasons why debate is important is because at least you get to hear some of the counter arguments to positions that you hold, so that you think through them a little bit more. These are pretty softball easy questions. These are kind of things that if you'd ever talked to anybody in your entire life about these issues, this would have come up in an argument. When Lance can't think about how to talk around like a 9-month abortion, what it tells me is you've never spoken to anybody in your entire life has disagreed with your position. But if you want to, there actually is a good reason for 9th-month abortions, and I'll give it to you. Here you go.
The pro-choice argument.
See, like Lance, you guys aren't seeing this, okay? But I see this because I see everything. Lance is asking these questions. Oh no, Tim Pool looked it up and got him.
Oh my God, dude.
Oh no, God. Oh, bro, he got walked around so hard. Oof, it was like, I think it was some of these were worse than I thought they'd be. There are so many wild exchanges here. Oh my God.
So let's, can we make the argument then that
I don't even think this is the worst.
The use of guns on people are allowed?
The use of guns on people are allowed?
To end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're talking about, you're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No, I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens according to the stats based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
No. Come on, hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question. You're
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado's specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason. They could just decide that they're bored.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is if you read Judith Thompson's original paper that makes the argument for abortion, that's like the most famous paper in defense of abortion, she even draws the distinction in that paper where she says, you have a right to have an abortion to protect your bodily autonomy, but do not confuse the right to have an abortion with the right to kill the fetus. That those two things are actually separate things. The fact that the fetus dies during an abortion is incidental to the fact that you're having an abortion. So in the case of like an 8 or 9 month old child, you have the right to have an abortion such that you can abort the pregnancy, but that doesn't give you a right to kill the child, and you may even have an ethical obligation to the life of that child. That is a really important distinction that she makes in that paper. Not that anybody's actually read it or gives a f about reading any of these things, but...
Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it
does.
But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
But hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it?
Hold on.
And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
We're talking about the removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no, but she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does. And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
bodily autonomy doesn't stop at my morality. Tim, it's not my...
This is one of the things that I fought with Hassan so hard over. I hate it when people do this thing where it's like, do you think this is morally acceptable? And they go, well, I wouldn't do it. And it's like, I didn't ask you that. Do you think it's like a morally acceptable? Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend it. Like, nobody's asking if you would recommend it. I don't know why you're even fucking saying that. Literally nobody here is talking about if you would recommend it or if you would do it personally. The question is do you think it's morally acceptable? Oh God, that triggers the fuck out of me.
My choice.
Right? So let's...
Does anybody have the one on the meth question? Why the fuck would you take that optics L and then you get canceled? Seriously, nobody bites those bullets but you. Wait, which bullets? Wait, you think it's biting a bullet to talk about what's morally allowed or not? What?
Believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body.
Hold on.
Not
What
her.
about meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess
Child
services
would be...
Oh,
yeah.
it's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
What are you doing?
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her
if
body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal, period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it.
You believe that the moment after the child...
Oh no. Oh, he's like, oh shit.
I think... You want to know what I think? I think there is a transgenocide.
Okay.
And I think it's you.
Okay.
Because you're sterilizing a lot of these people.
How so?
I mean, they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and puberty and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads in the uterus is an absolute sterilization, and then puberty blockers have a very high rate, and cross-sex hormones have an extremely high rate of sterilizing the individual. So these people can no longer reproduce. That's genocide.
Is this the joke you're gonna go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce. Mm-hmm. And if they're at a young age and they haven't had the ability, like for instance, Jazz Jennings can never have kids. Jazz Jennings also, and this is probably part of your studies, can't actually feel any sexual feeling of any kind.
Do you have any idea how weird this sounds right now? Like, why are you obsessing with a stranger's genital pleasure? That's so weird. That's so bizarre.
That was very weird yourself.
You guys are all weird.
No. So I'm talking about adults who engage in activities, which is a large portion of the global economy, whether you like it or not. Sure. Sex sells, they say. And when I say this person will never have this ability, you go, how weird is that?
It's weird for you to fixate on a stranger's genital pleasure. That's strange. That's so bizarre.
Well, she's public about it.
But see, you're not making an argument right now, is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument. Yeah, that's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
No, I'm just giving you my genuine thought when you say something like that. Like,
well, it was a really pathetic attempt at trying to make an argument.
Talk about that? Why should we discuss whether or not she has genital feeling? That's not important. It's not. It's not in my business.
So let's focus then on the sterilizing of the individual. Are you okay with that?
Who's sterilizing people?
Jazz Jennings is sterile.
Why are we going back to Jazz Jennings? I don't know anything about her.
Because Jazz is a famous individual on cable television.
So if she is sterile for whatever reason, what does that have to do with me? Why does that concern me? Why should I pass legislation?
The sterilization of teenagers.
This is such a weird way to frame this. Like
you are removing.
You can't just keep saying it's weird.
Moving teenagers' ability to have children.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not a doctor, Tim.
You
I don't have the ability to do this.
I'm not doing it. It's not me.
Right?
I support people having access to health care. Of course. Why would I want to prevent that just because some people have bigotry towards them?
Let's try again. You seem scared of this. 1776's Life says, what is a woman?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
A woman is an adult human female.
Dude,
Easy
you
enough?
can't watch
I
these
agree with-
clips.
What?
The whole thing. You can't watch clips. If you want to watch all the clips and see all of him getting... Dude, Lance blocked me. I have taken so many shits on this dude. The guy and I clash like a motherfucker. I'm not here to suck his dick off. And 9 times out of 10, you know, I'm side with your side and shit, right? So it is not in character for me to just be a contrarian for no reason. I watched the debate. Most of the time, Lance is right. You can't keep watching these clips just shitting on him.
Okay, would you?
The whole thing is, it's worth a watch. Like, the guy does really well, especially when you get into the discussion about meta-analysis. Watch Tim get so mad because he's getting called on all his shit and he can't defend it. But if you keep watching the clips and with no context of before and after or anything like that, it's going to look terrible.
Okay. Do you want me to, how long is the show again?
I think it's like 2 hours maybe.
Yeah, it. Link me up. Okay, I'll watch it just for you, Lycan, okay? Because I love you.
Just for me? All right, buddy, here, I got you the link.
Okay.
I fucking love you, man. I'm going to DM it to you right now. Oh,
Click
real quick,
that-
before you go into it. Meth.
Yeah.
There was the meth point, the abortion point, and the Jazz Jennings are like the 3 where he like does put his foot in his mouth. So I need to say those before you watch this all. And like and said, he did great the entire time. Those 3 he does poorly on, but everything else I think
else
he does
is
really well.
Gucci. Okay.
Look out for the meta-analysis part of the discussion, and the left-handed one does really well there.
Gotcha.
Anyway,
all right.
love you. Bye.
Outrage continues to grow over deadly subway chokehold encounter. So the death of a subway rider who was put into a chokehold by a former Marine on the train has been ruled a homicide, and now activists are calling for charges to be filed. They have planned several protests and rallies on Thursday as the NYPD has issued a call for public help in their investigation. Jordan Neely, 30, died from a compression of the neck, the city's medical examiner determined Wednesday. Neely is recognizable to some New Yorkers as a Michael Jackson impersonator who regularly danced in the Times Square Transit Hub. On Monday afternoon, he was yelling and pacing back and forth on an F train in Manhattan. Witnesses and police said when he was restrained by at least 3 people.
Supposedly, I saw a picture of a Reddit account. Where apparently somebody noticed him dancing and said that he was like acting out and being aggressive and a threat to people back in 2018. So apparently this guy's been, if that Reddit account is to be believed, or his 42 arrests are to be believed. Wait, was it 20? It might have been 2013, not 2018. I thought it was 2018. But if it's to be believed, then he has a history of kind of like violent behavior on the subway.
Including a U.S. Marine veteran who pulled one arm tightly around his neck. A physical struggle ensued, leading to Neely losing consciousness. He was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. On Wednesday, a medical examiner determined Neely's his death was a homicide. However, that does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a homicide. Okay, that's the stupidest bit of writing I've ever heard. As a murder, they mean. Homicide means death caused by person. It doesn't mean criminal. So what they're trying to say is...
Homicide means death caused by person, doesn't mean criminal. Is that true? Is manslaughter considered homicide? I have no idea. Is manslaughter a homicide? Homicide refers to all criminal offenses involving a person's death and therefore encompasses both murder and manslaughter. Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, homicide probably means death of human or whatever, right? That's probably what it means. Like regicide is death of royalty. Patricide is death of parent, father. Homicide is probably death of human.
That does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a homicide. Okay, that's the stupidest bit of writing I've ever heard. As a murder, they mean. Homicide means death caused by person. It doesn't mean criminal.
True.
So what they're trying to say is, though the death was ruled a homicide, it does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a murder. That is up to the Manhattan DA's office, which is investigating. But I suppose I'm probably being a little bit too harsh because you can, they're not being clear here. You can make the argument there's reckless homicide, there's negligent homicide. And so what they're saying is it's not clear that he will be criminally charged. They probably just should have said They're going to say, as a part of our rigorous ongoing investigation, we'll review the medical examiner's report, assess all available video and photo footage, identify and interview as many witnesses as possible, and obtain additional medical records, read a statement from a spokesperson for the DA. So we've got video coming out of New York. Protesters, I believe this was yesterday, were seen in the streets, and the police made some arrests. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but one of our reporters, Elad Eliyahu, was physically assaulted by one of the protesters and had his property destroyed while he was in the process of doing journalism. But let's just get down to brass tacks here, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguments about this one. This is the story of a guy who was having a mental breakdown. I guess the news that recently came out was that he was a subway performer and his mental health collapsed after his, I think his mom was killed, is what they're reporting.
Jesus.
And after that, he kind of just lost it. And then he had been arrested 40 times. He had once punched a 67-year-old woman in the face. And so as he was belligerent and on the subway, reportedly threatening people, saying that he would take it, he was ready to die and he would hurt people, this is when the three men subdued him. Reportedly, the Marine told everyone to call 911 and get the police down there. And then he ended up dying, which has resulted in the left, like AOC, whether or not people, I don't know if you consider her left, but AOC.
Yeah, she's progressive.
She said this was a public murder. And now you've got protesters calling for this guy to be arrested. They're saying he committed a murder. And I think this is actually a really good example of what is described as anarcho-tyranny, in that you had 25 people pushed onto subway tracks in the past year. You've had like a woman get raped on a train in Philadelphia. And we don't hear a single peep from any of these politicians, from any of these activists, until someone actually stops the guy. If you go back 7 years...
Kills him, right? Kills him. He killed him.
Sure.
Yeah.
So when someone is being violent and then someone else acts in self-defense of others and the person dies in the process, now there's all of a sudden calls for, okay, so this guy should be criminally charged, but there was no call for stopping the 25 people being pushed onto subway tracks. That's an ongoing and acceptable thing, I suppose.
I'm never going to sit here and try and defend people pushing people on the subway tracks. That's a crime. Like, that's terrible.
Attempted murder.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if they die. So that's horrible. No one's going to be on the other side of that argument. But in terms of like the guy who just got killed, isn't, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, doesn't, in self-defense, the proportionality of what you're doing has to be in response to the actual aggressive actions of the person, right? It has to be proportional? Is that correct? So you feel in your mind that it was a proportional response for him to choke him out to death in that situation because he was going to become such a threat to the person who choked him out.
But you made a big leap right there.
What's the leap?
You're ascribing intent to the Marine to kill.
Oh, I'm not saying he intended to kill him. I never said that, but he did end up killing him, right?
That's immaterial.
What has to be material, Tim, has to be, is he doing what he's doing?
Are you making a proportionality argument, or are you making
Yes, I'm asking you that because is what he did proportional to the threat? Yes. So the threat that he was going to do.
It is proportional to subdue someone that is threatening other people and saying he'll die in the process.
And end up killing him, even if that was...
See, now you're doing it again. You're ascribing intent.
No, I'm not ascribing intent. I'm saying the results. This is what happened. The guy's dead. He's dead, right?
Results are immaterial to the proportionality of action.
So the proportionality of action in your mind was justified to what he was doing, his actual actions.
He held the guy on the ground while he said call 911.
And killed him. And choked him until he died.
You're doing it again.
No, you keep saying I'm doing it again. I'm saying this is the end results. I'm not saying this is what he meant to do. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. Neither do you. None of us know what he meant to do that day when he woke up.
Absolutely. If someone is threatening other people, you are allowed to subdue them.
It sucked. What's with all the parking lots?
Oh, dude, you should have come to party with me and your mom.
And then would it be like an involuntary manslaughter?
So see,
No, but this is what happened. It's to the point of death. So you have.
It's not a criminal.
It's not. I'm not saying he intended to kill him. That's a difference, right? But if he ended up dying as a result of that, was that proportional?
Yes.
He needed to be killed.
No.
Or he could have killed someone else.
Hold on. Stop that. You can't. You keep trying to say needed to be. No.
But that's what happened.
The Marine.
That's the end result.
You're saying the Marine tried to kill him.
No, I didn't say that.
Then
you are saying that I'm saying that. You're putting words in my mouth. I'm saying that's what ended up happening.
Let me respond. Then why would you say needed to be killed?
Because what he did to him, his chokeout ended up with the guy dying. So that was the end result. So his proportional response to what he thought was a threat was that I'm going to choke him out. I'm not trying to kill him, but I'm going to choke him out. Whether or not he dies is going to be something that we're just going to remain to be on the cards, right? This is chance. We'll leave it up to chance here.
So you are making a huge leap right there.
There's no leap, Tim. What he's doing is that proportional. Is choking someone with the possibility of death. With the possibility of death.
Yes,
okay, so
absolutely.
So that's
I'll tell you this. Let me tell you. So if
I think Lance is like super scared to give any ground, and then Tim is playing kind of like fast and loose. like you have to be proportional in response to what the person is doing. But the result, it's hard. I don't even know who I agree with more here because they're talking past each other so much. Because Tim is like in super debate mode and Lance is in super debate mode. I don't even know who I'm agreeing. I don't even know what point both are trying to make yet. Actually, I'm not sure.
If someone tried illegally entering my home,
sure,
I will use whatever force necessary to stop them from illegally entering my home and illegally entering my home. Right? I have the legal justification in the state that I live in to use whatever force necessary to stop someone from entering my home illegally. Now, you can't invite someone in, and there's actually some legal barriers here. Like, if someone actually walks up to your house and the door is open and they walk in, that's actually not an illegal entry. Mm-hmm. It is to a certain degree, but it's like trespass. Sure. It's like your door was open, there was no obstruction, and then you'll make an argument about entering the domicile could be considered fourth-degree burglary, depending on which state you're in. If they actually open the door and enter, they've now committed felony burglary, and you are entitled in West Virginia to use whatever force necessary to stop someone from illegally entering your house. That doesn't mean you just intend to actually kill someone. So in terms of we're out in the street, someone is threatening someone else. You are legally entitled to subdue them. Now,
even if that even in the act of doing that, he could kill them.
Yes, absolutely, okay. Absolutely. Because where you're going with it is like, what act of subduing would be permitted in your mind then? Like holding his hands tightly?
One that doesn't have a possibility of death, I would say, because
give me one in your martial arts expertise.
Zero, absolutely zero.
Okay, so
there's and I think I can contend that no one here has any, right? Am I in a judo room?
I just watched a lot of movies.
No, but
sharp elbows.
But no, none of us have black belts. We don't know this shit. We're just a bunch of people who talk on the internet.
But now going black belts. I mean, I have hostile environment training, and I have some minimal martial arts training. Minimal. I've done some kung fu, taekwondo.
So once again, there's no experts here to talk about this.
Yeah. So certainly will contend I am not an expert. However, if someone is threatening harm against another person, and 3 people find it reasonable to subdue him, and the person dies, that person was in the process of committing a crime. If you lose your life in the process of committing a crime, I'm not going to blame the victims for this, right? Would you blame the victims for this?
When you're saying victims, you mean the people who killed him?
The people who are being attacked.
But were they attacked prior, or did they try to subdue him? Do we have footage before the event begins?
So in New York, for example, if you go up to someone and threaten them, you've committed a crime, right? You've committed a criminal act.
Like neither of them, maybe even like the conversation should have started off way more slowly. Like, what do we need to enact self-defense? Can you defend another person? Well, what's an appropriate way to subdue somebody? Like, they're asking good questions, and then they like move on to like the next argument point, right? Like I think Tim asked a good question. Like, what would be a reasonable way to subdue somebody, right? What's a reasonable amount of force to use? That's a good question. But then he moves off it like immediately to get to like the next debate point,
Of violence against another person by threatening them and going up to their face. Right?
And so you're saying at that point you have the ability to proportionally respond with violence.
Actually, there's a video of this. Myth Informed has it. 7 years ago, this man was called a hero for diffusing violence by putting another man in a chokehold. A man in the subway was getting up in people's faces, and he was threatening them, and another man got up behind him and put him in a chokehold, and he was put on national television, and he was celebrated as a hero for doing so. So this is what I'm talking about, anarcho-tyranny. I feel like you're latching onto this completely from a point of you don't have knowledge on proper technique for subduing an individual.
None of us do.
Nor the legal expertise.
None of us do as well.
But see that's kind of an absurd thing to just outright. Well, look, I'm going to say this guy committed a murder and should go to prison, but I'm not an expert and neither are you, therefore he should be convicted.
I never said that. I'm actually asking questions because these are things that I don't fully understand about. Is it legal for him to do what he did?
Yes. That's why he wasn't
proportionally legal.
Yes.
Okay.
That's why he wasn't charged. He was released. However, in this state,
like that statement's not true. We listened to this up to here, I think, last night. Like, just because you don't get charged doesn't mean that what you did was legal. That's not true at all.
In age, what's likely going to happen is anarcho-tyranny. People go out in the streets, they protest, and the police say, for political reasons, we're going to go find this guy and we're going to arrest him.
But I don't know. It depends. Unfortunately, we don't have footage of what happened before the chokehold.
That's what I'd like to know.
But if there's enough people on the train that are witness to what was happening, and they're like, yo, he was threatening all of us, then I think the cops are not going to mess with that guy.
And that's what was reported. And there were 3 men trying to subdue him as he fought back. So there's no debate that this guy was acting violently and threatening people, and even said he was prepared to die. At that point, you have what could be a terroristic threat. I think if a guy got on a train and screamed, "I'm going to cause harm to people," and then said he was willing to die, you'd probably want to stop him because there's signs all over the subway saying if you see something, say something. And I suppose we could go the route of when Luke Rudkowski had that video, there was a guy in a subway with a knife stabbing people, and the cop said, we're not going to get involved at all. And then some guy had to try and intervene himself. It's funny, that guy's a hero.
Yeah, that was, I think, oh yeah, here it is. Matt Walsh retweeted Alexandra Cortez's tweet from 6 hours ago and asking specifically, what are they supposed to do? What are people supposed to do in this situation? Are they just supposed to sit there? If someone's screaming they're gonna hurt somebody, you just sit there and wait until they actually hurts the person and then you respond?
And I'm just curious, honest question. We have the story from the Daily Mail from October. 25 victims have been shoved in front of subway cars so far this year. 2 victims were killed. Where was the protest?
Well, where was
really
the video footage of it?
There is video footage of it.
Is it public?
Yes.
Public video footage?
And I can't play it on YouTube, but there's video footage of people being pushed in front of trains. And where's AOC? Where's any of these protesters? Nowhere to be found. Anarcho-tyranny is that when the criminals do it, as explained in, Solzhenitsyn, the Gulag Archipelago, when a criminal does this act in the Soviet Union, that's just a criminal, that's what they do. But when you, the citizen, defend yourself, you knew better.
But so you're blaming AOC for not bringing attention to this specifically? So as
blaming?
in, or you're saying that she's hypocritical because she doesn't talk about the people being pushed in front of trains, but she's talking about this now? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying hypocritical. No, I'm saying I have a question of why now? Why only when people are victimized and they defend themselves are we now upset about what happened on the subway?
You keep saying victimized. We're talking about a poor homeless person who
attacks people.
may have been having an episode and died in what ended up being the struggle. So why are the people who were subduing him victims? What makes them victims of this?
He assaulted them.
So you have that on camera, that he assaulted them first?
According to all the news reports and the police and the witness statements.
Can we see the footage? I want to see. I haven't seen that yet.
I think we can show the chokeout.
Okay, so according to the news reports, the witnesses and the police, he went and threatened violence against people, which is assault. And
right, but you're saying he specifically threatened violence against the people who subdued him. Do we have evidence of that? It's one thing for him to be in a train being like, I'm upset.
You're not winning an argument here.
I'm not trying to win an argument.
You're being
I'm
awfully
asking you,
pedantic.
Awfully pedantic?
Yes.
Why would you use pedantic in this form? As in, I'm trying to get to the root of this problem.
No. It's absurd to imply that if a guy walks up to a woman and says he's going to...
Why is the left fighting over this? It seems like a losing argument. There's so many details. We just don't. Every argument is shooting in the dark. Because there's a couple points that you just as a lefty, you like to harp on. One is all homeless people are victims no matter what. And then second is black people are always victims of white supremacy no matter what. And those two things are enough to just infinitely power whatever outrage you have about a given topic, and you don't really need to think about or care about what actually happened for anything.
To harm her, that another man can't protect her.
Right, and so this is why I'm asking, did he say to the people who subdued him, I'm going to harm you?
Yes,
I'm going to hurt you.
That's immaterial to a self-defense claim in proportionality.
Okay.
If this guy was threatening people, right, and then someone said, I'm going to stop you before you hurt someone, that is legal self-defense acting in the defense of others. That makes those people who are stopping the guy threatening people the victims of a violent individual who is trying to cause harm. See, I just find it fascinating that there's an effort to defend the aggressor in this circumstance. Right?
Oh, so you're suggesting that the guys, even if the guys that were choking out weren't the ones being threatened, that they're still considered a victim because they stepped in to defend other people?
Well, I'm saying outright that if you're on a train and there's a guy, you're on a train, you can't get off that train. You are trapped.
Yeah,
right?
I used to live in this area, by the way. I used to live in Flatbush. I used to take these trains every single day. I have seen this. I have seen this and worse. I have seen people in the middle of episodes where I was like, this person could potentially either harm themselves or harm me. It never crossed my mind that I need to choke them out to the point of potential death in order to protect everyone else on the train.
I think you also have to be really, really careful. Sometimes you can get away with bullshitting life experience that you don't have, and then you can just say whatever, but you got to be really careful if you stumble onto the wrong issue when you say some retarded shit. If you have been around scary homeless people, this lefty virtue signal, and somebody else was doing it too. I saw another popular tweet that was going really viral recently. This virtue signal of oh, I've been around violent homeless people all the time. They're not scary at all. They're just usually chill. Oh no, the Majority Report, that lady, God, she's so stupid. Holy shit. This lady did it. I
was hit at one point sitting on the subway by a man who was having a mental health episode. He sat next to me and he was elbowing and kind of flailing around and hit me in the face and in my body. And it was jarring, right? The idea that I would want him to be hurt in any way. I just didn't want to be near him in that moment because I understood something was going on here. Every one of us who's taken public transit has had this kind of situation, something similar happen, seeing someone struggling. That doesn't mean that our fear in that instance, and I was a little scared because I was hit.
It's a problem. Like, it's people that need help.
But like, my fear is not the primary object of like what we should be focusing on right now. It's the fact that this person is in pain. And so like the politics of dehumanization privileges the bourgeois kind of concern of people's like immediate discomfort in this narrow instance, as opposed to larger humanity and life. It's really freaking twisted.
Yeah. You gotta, if you just don't have the experience, you gotta shut the fuck up, because this is gonna be the thing, this will be the issue that kills your liberal support in places like Seattle, in places like San Francisco, and in places like New York City, and in places like LA, right? A lot of really blue areas and blue states, maybe it's not a concern right now, but holy fuck. If you're in these areas where the homeless problem is intense and extreme and violent and scary, and it's not even just the US. I've seen crazy motherfuckers in Toronto. I've seen really crazy motherfuckers in Vancouver. The homeless problem is very, very, very scary for people that are around these people. And if you don't live in these cities, if you don't walk in these areas, if you don't like do things like this, like if you're not in those areas, you should probably just shut the fuck up. You probably just shouldn't say anything at all. You just need to shut the fuck up. That's it. Yeah, this type of rhetoric, like anybody that's lived in these cities is going to look at you like you're fucking insane. Like you're fucking insane to act like, oh, it's just whatever, you know? Especially when a few years ago, these same people were trying to say, oh, if you're a woman and a man catcalls you, that can cause post-traumatic stress disorder. And if a man even looks at you the wrong way in the street, he might be a rapist and your whole fucking world will fall apart. But homeless guy standing in front of me screaming at the top of his lungs, who smells like shit, maybe actually just took a shit on the street and is saying he wants to fucking kill you, that's just our unhoused neighbor. Like, bro, you can't have it both ways. That is insane. Destiny, why are you assuming she's lying? Do you think that couldn't have happened to her? My assumption that she's lying, and I could be wrong, I'll admit, I'm giving you like the 2% that I could be wrong, is I have never met a single person that lives in Seattle, LA, San Francisco, or New York City that has told me that they have absolutely no problem with the homeless people there. Not a single one. Now, maybe I'll get a DM from a friend who will say like, oh, actually, you know, I'm there and I see him all the time and whatever, blah, blah, blah. Never in my life. Never. And I've had friends from these areas that are super progressive that are like, I am really progressive, blah, 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 but I feel like people kind of missed the mark on this particular issue, especially women. Especially women. Do you mean she's lying about not being afraid, right? Oh, I don't even think she had the encounter. Or maybe she did, and she was like 19, so she thought she was invincible, I guess. I don't know. But I'm saying, like, just don't talk about these issues. If you just shouldn't. You should just shut the fuck up. Like, it's actually insane. It's insane to come out here on these issues taking this position. Like, it's wild. How many interactions with homeless have you had, and what types of interactions? I mean, proportionally speaking, not too many, because I'm not even in these areas frequently, but I've had quite a few crazy interactions. So in Austin, off of 6th Street and on 6th Street, I've seen lots of homeless people. The last time me and Melina were there, we saw a dude that was taking a shit in the street, who was a little bit scary because when we walked by him, it seemed like he was trying to talk to us, but we didn't pay much attention. We walked by. The time I was in Austin before that, there's a part off of 6th Street where there's just like a homeless encampment area where there's like a ton of people, broken bottles, glasses, needles on the ground. I don't know what the fuck was going on in that area. Those are 2 experiences in Austin. When I was in Toronto, I think twice when I've been there, 2 different times, I think with V, we were walking down the street and there'd be a random dude screaming at us at the top of his lungs. I didn't know if we were about to get fucking murdered, but it was just a crazy guy screaming. So that was in Toronto, in Vancouver, and even in Gastown, which I don't even think is necessarily that bad of an area. When I was in Ari and Nina, ran into crazy screaming people. Here in Miami, there was the story with Dan. Remember where there was the one guy that Dan tried to use the Russian accent on, who like was at our table, like shouting at us like he was about to start killing us. In LA, West Hollywood, I've had screaming crazy homeless people. On Venice Beach, me and another friend saw a guy pissing on the beach and then just like laying around and rolling in it. I don't know what he was doing. This is aside from like all of the homeless encampments and all of that. What else? Where else? In Seattle? Holy shit. Bro, I don't know what it is about Seattle. I could be crazy, but you could be walking in a nice area, like in a downtown area, and then you take a turn and all of a sudden you're in like fucking Shank Alley. And there's, I guess I haven't anybody scream at me in Seattle before or anything crazy like that, to be fair. Just very like spooky area looking places. What else? What other cities? Miami, not too much, but my parents live like in like Homestead, so I'm like in the boonies there. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't even spent that much time in cities. I don't live in cities. When I talk about kids in the suburbs, I should shut the fuck up. That's kind of me. I don't even really live in the city so much. And in the limited time that I've spent in cities, I've seen fucking insane shit, and I don't even fucking live there. I would say, San Francisco. Holy, San Francisco is the inside Starbucks and two homeless guys out front screaming at everybody that walked out of the fucking store. They were outside of a Starbucks. They were just one guy. To be fair, one guy was just asking for money, and the other guy, I don't know if he was getting into fights with people because somebody was saying something to him. I haven't spent as much time in San Francisco, but I hear really crazy things about San Francisco. But I don't even spend much time in cities. I am the suburb kid. I stay in my apartment all day, and the little bit of time that I've spent in cities, even I've had insane experiences. I can't imagine people that live there. I can't imagine people that live there full time. So yeah, I don't know. The fact that people just say like, oh, it's not a big deal is, I don't know, man. Jesus Christ. Lance should know better. He lives in Vancouver. You got to be careful. Do people know this by now? When you say you live in Vancouver, or you live that's like how like Nick Fuentes or Just Pearly Things lives in Chicago. They don't really. They live that's like saying you live in LA, but you like live in Malibu. Or like that's like saying you live in what other. Bro, I don't even know. I lived in LA for 3 years. I didn't even really live in LA. I don't even know all the cities around there. But like people can like live in that city, but they don't actually live in the city. They live in a suburb that's like 30 minutes away, and it's a totally different scene, you know? So there are a lot of very nice suburbs around Seattle. There are a lot of really nice suburbs around San Francisco. It's a lot different than being in the city proper though. So be careful when you hear people say shit like that. Because
Pepe has never lost.
Oh, nice. Rolling Typhoon, thanks for the 50 gifted subs. Yeah, like I've been in really nice suburbs around. I had an ex that lived in Seattle, or a suburb in Seattle, and I've been like in really nice suburbs around Seattle. They're beautiful. Vancouver is not sprawling. If you live in Vancouver, you know about the homeless problem. Sure, but some parts of Vancouver are worse than others, right? You've got like the famous East Hastings area that sucks. I don't know how many suburbs are out from Vancouver. I know there's like islands and shit that people live on, but.
That never even entered my mind. So that's why I'm asking you, do you have specific footage of him threatening the very people who subdued and ended up killing him? But
I live in Toronto. I agree you run into homeless people a lot, but I wouldn't say any are a serious threat to my safety. It's just annoying more than anything. I agree with you. And then here's where I'll extend a little bit of I'll try to extend a little bit of empathy to our vagina having friends. I don't care. I'm a guy. Like if a homeless dude wants to start shit, like you're so methed out and shit, you're probably gonna fall over, okay? If these people are like on the verge of fucking insanity, other worlds, okay? But like if you were like a 105 pound, 5'4" woman and you're walking down the street and some dude starts screaming at you, I feel like it would be a significantly more scary situation. I think it would be really, really, really scary. That would be my guess. And I don't know, maybe women don't give a fuck either, but like, yeah, like realistically, have I ever felt unsafe? I mean, they're like funny to laugh at, but I also laugh when fucking 10,000 Islamic jihadists were on my fucking Twitter, sending me death threats and doxing me and shit the other day too. So my perception of danger and shit is probably all sorts of. But yeah, I mean, I think as a man, I think maybe it's not as big of a deal, but damn, for women, that's got to be super scary. And to be fair, there have been some homeless experiences that have scared me. The guy at South Beach, that guy legitimately scared me. I thought Dan Mooten, I thought we were going to get knifed. I thought the guy was going to try to kill us.
Homeless in Austin are a problem in the suburbs too. I used to live in some North Austin suburbs, and I remember they could be violent from time to time. Definitely scary.
There have been a few guys that I thought were going to start fighting. It's not many times. I would say in probably like less than 10% of my crazy homeless interactions, I thought there was going to be some fighting, but still, that's me visiting. That's just me visiting in an area. Like, I can't imagine if I lived there what my experience would be like, you know? But yeah, I don't know.
Why does that matter?
I don't think there is footage.
But, like, what is it?
All right. Well, then that's all I want to know.
But what does
All
it
right.
have to do with what I said? That's why I understand your thought.
Because
process.
I would think that the proportionality being that you ended up killing them, even if that was not your intent, I understand that you don't think he intended to do that. Fine. But even if that was it, were they like threats to him in the immediate present? Were they on the verge of committing an act of violence towards him that required proportional violence that ended up in death?
But it's not a requirement someone threatens you for you to act in defense of others, right? So your question is kind of in an unnecessary direction. And I'll elaborate. If you're on a train and you're trapped in a box and someone is threatening violence, then yeah, you're a victim.
So I've been a victim multiple times then. I was in these subways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
It's the craziest thing to me.
But I don't feel like a victim. I've never been hurt. I never was hurt by people who were going through those kind of episodes.
Other people have been.
I'm not saying they haven't. I'm not saying this is a good thing.
25 people were pushed in front of trains.
Okay, so these 25 people who were pushed in front of trains, how is that directly related? Were these people also going through episodes? Were they also people who were homeless? Did they have mental illness?
I would say anybody shoving
here?
someone in front of a train at random is like going through an episode. You know what I mean? The correlation is that crime and murder on the subway has been increasing, or has at least been apparent in the press, but I don't see you caring about it at all until it's the aggressor who gets killed.
No one, I think, on the left is going to defend this stat that you're pulling.
Then why put a guy in prison for finally saying stop killing people?
This is like, Tim, if I approached you today and I was like, hey, do you know what goes on in Rikers Island? Have any of you done a show on what happens in Rikers Island? How they hold people in Rikers Island? Do you know what?
Not Rikers Island specifically, but we talk about prison reform all the time.
Okay, do you know about bail reform and the fact that people die in Rikers Island waiting to have their day in court because they can't afford it?
And we talked about it.
And you've done entire shows on that. And we talked about how people literally die in prison while they're waiting for that shit?
We talked about
terrible.
Okay, so we actually talked about one guy who got wrongly arrested, lost his job, was kicked out of his apartment, went to Rikers for 3 months, only to be released and then told, sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. The city owes him nothing because they considered the prosecution not to be malicious. But this is the problem, man. Like, we talk about stuff like this all the time.
But the example you just gave me was not me talking about the systemic problem of people who are poor being in Rikers Island before they get to trial. They die before they're not released. You just gave me a story of someone who was released prior to that.
I'm giving you an example of a specific show we've actually talked about someone wrongly held and had their life destroyed.
Okay.
Now, of course, we can go on further and say, yes, people have died. Yes, the system is corrupt. And my point is this. When we talk about stuff like this, like, wow, in October, we talked about 25 people being pushed in front of train cars. You guys just shit all over us and ignore these problems. Then finally, when three guys...
ignoring this. I told you, no one's on the other side of this. No one is pro-push people onto trains.
Where's your protest? Where's your protest?
Where's my protest?
Yeah, where's your protest?
Where's your Rikers protest?
We had it on the show, but you don't watch the show.
You did a protest? You did an actual protest? You guys stood up and then walked to the...
It's somebody said it in chat. Like, these guys are like both sitting on such extreme ends. They're like not even communicating with each other. It's like it's like so silly. Jesus.
We don't go on the streets ever,
but
right?
I'm not blaming you for not talking about that, Tim, because this is the problem of like you are judging someone based on absence, based on your absence of caring about something. Why haven't you talked about this, Lance? The fact that you haven't talked about this means that you don't care about that.
That's not what I said.
That's not true, though.
That's not what I said.
That's the implication of what you were saying right now.
My implication is, instead of helping us deal with this when we talk about it, you make up garbage about us and then post nonsense on the internet.
When have I brought up garbage about people pushing people into trains? This is the most random example.
I'm not talking about you saying. I'm saying you don't talk about it, right? I'm not criticizing you for not talking about it. I'm saying finally, when there are people who are like, we've had 25 people pushed in front of trains, we've had 2 of them killed, I'm not going to let this person hurt somebody, it's y'all saying that person should go to prison. It's like, how is that solving the problem? You guys are making it worse. Your protests, your support for the criminals make this worse.
So our solution to this, if you're asking, when you're saying you mean the left, right? Our solution to a lot of this is that
you're speaking in support of the criminal, so I'm saying you.
Okay, so I am saying that the solution to a lot of this would be investing very heavily in things like healthcare, like getting and making sure that people have access to it and not cutting the restrictions, like allowing people to have access to healthcare, not as a requirement based on how much money they have, based on their income, but allowing them to get the care they need. That would have gone a long way to preventing a problem like this and future problems that are going to happen. I have no idea what's going on with the 25 people who've been pushed in front of trains. If it happens to be because people have mental illness, this is a tangible solution that we could work towards. This is something that are you against that idea about investing heavily into mental health care, public health care? Well, then there you go.
So
That's a much better line.
So here's
right?
my issue. My issue is when this story came out in October, we talked about it. And we said, why is this happening? What are the solutions? What are the problems? When this story comes out now, you, completely ignorant of what's been going on in New York, side with the criminal. And so people like me are flabbergasted that we've been focused on the issue of crime, the issue of mental health, the entire time going back several years. And this is why I left in New York, because 2 cops got murdered outside of my apartment. And then what do we hear? Protesters in the street defending the criminals.
You keep saying criminal. I have a problem with criminalizing people.
I think one of the craziest types of examples, one of the craziest examples of this type of kind of behavior going on, I don't know if anybody remembers it. Do you remember when there was I think there was a woman who called the police because there was a guy outside that was trying to bang his way into an apartment. He might have even shot a couple times. And I think the cops ended up showing up, had a 2-hour standoff with this guy, and eventually shot and killed him. The family of that guy did a GoFundMe and raised more money than the woman whose apartment was shot into, who was like innocently badgered.
There was casings in the hallway. The shot went through my door to the pillar to the kitchen. I was cooking food for my kids. He's dead now, so that can't happen, right?
Now, this afternoon, just as the protest was starting to get underway against police violence, the woman who lived in the apartment directly next door to Tekle showed up. Her name is Arabella Yarborough, and she says she was cooking dinner for her 2 young children on Wednesday night when bullets began flying through her walls. She shared these photos of the aftermath of the shooting with us that show multiple bullet holes through her front door and through her bathroom wall. She confronted the family of Tekle, saying she had 5 minutes to live while Tekle had 6 hours to choose life or death.
That man was armed. George Floyd was not armed. Breonna Taylor was not armed. Amir Lockett, he was armed and he had his own guns, but they came into his home while he's licensed to carry and killed him. He did not shoot fire. This man intentionally tried to kill us.
It was unbelievable. Like, because people were so keen on, like, the cops were like, oh my God. That was wild.
People who are homeless or people who are poor or people who are mentally ill. And then suddenly...
I'm not saying he's a criminal for being poor. I'm saying he's a criminal because he threatened people with harm. Like incitement to violence is a crime, just like AOC says, right?
I really want to see the start of this video footage. I want to see the moment where he was threatening the very people who tried to take him down.
He doesn't have to be threatening the very people,
the witnesses,
though, right?
the media, and the police say this is what happened, or we can agree. No one has any idea, so there's no point in even talking about it.
I think the interesting maybe confluence is that you were mentioning preventative measures are a way to go about it. What do you think about defensive measures, like people should be armed and ready for this kind of thing regardless of the prevention methods?
I mean, when it comes to defensive measures and people should be armed, I'm going to probably be on the exact opposite as the rest of you, because you're probably very pro-gun here, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just making, we don't have the same problems in Canada that you do in the United States for mass shootings, for mass gun violence, for that kind of stuff.
You have 30 million people, don't you? Is it 30 million?
Okay, so by ratio of the population, Tim. So if you compare ratio of the population, Canadians to America, we don't have mass shootings like you do. No one else does. It's a uniquely American problem. The mass shooting thing is a uniquely American thing.
Obesity is pretty heavy here.
Well, it's.
Why would you bring
I don't think it's fair to say uniquely American because there are mass shootings in many other countries.
There is, but it's a uniquely American problem that it's disproportionately happening here.
Well, mass killings aren't a uniquely American problem, but mass killings done with the use of firearms is much more uniquely American. I don't think anyone's going to debate that countries that have fewer firearms are going to have fewer people killing each other with firearms. It then becomes
Australia has more per capita than the United States. Is that right?
Per capita?
That is not true. No country comes close to the United States.
List of countries by no. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a mistake.
Sorry,
El Salvador, Venezuela.
And when you're correct,
is it right if I just finish my thought?
Sure.
Yeah. So my basic point.
That was way off. The United States is not the most. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th.
El Salvador.
And so of all the other countries in that list, which of them are considered part of the G20? You have to compare countries that have similar economic systems, similar economic societal structures. The United States places number 1 when you compare them to any other G20 country.
It's true that as far as developed nations go, the United States does have a much higher rate of gun violence. I don't deny that. My argument is simply that other nations do have higher rates, depending on the nation that you're looking at. There's still a pretty decently high homicide rate in a lot of developed countries, and there are a lot of mass killings. In the United States, those mass killings are generally carried out with firearms, but according to CDC studies, firearms are used to prevent more violent crimes each year than they're used to commit. So it's a much more complex argument than simply saying the U.S. has more firearm deaths. Therefore, restricting firearm ownership would prevent those.
Let me ask you too. Do you know what country has the most grenade attacks?
I only know the answer because I saw you typing it. I think it's Sweden, right?
I actually didn't type that in. I searched for.
By the way,
I would have no
high
idea.
Murder rate was a very clumsy.
I don't want to cheat, but I saw you typing it. But yeah,
I didn't type in Sweden. I typed in most grenade attacks by country, and Sweden is the only thing that comes up.
Wow.
And yeah, Sweden has more grenade attacks than any other country, but grenades are illegal there.
Okay.
I've got a feeling
why are there grenade attacks in Sweden?
Yeah, I would love to answer this question. So if we're going back to guns and the U.S. versus Canada, when I said that there's G20, if we look at all the G20 countries, the United States disproportionately by ratio of the population has way more gun deaths, way more gun violence. And a lot of that gun violence, by the way, is people killing themselves, just so we're completely clear.
Yeah.
But if you look at it in the framework of Canada has a very different set of rules for firearms than the United States does. You can still have a firearm in Canada. You just have to take a 2-day course and you get a license and then you get gun training and then you have the ability to buy guns. And that way, everyone has a license. They know how to use firearms properly. They're not just going to be running around the streets, pointing them and then all that kind of shit. And but you can also control for that.
But that's not what's happening in the United States. Like people just running around randomly. Like
no, I'm not saying that it is. But I'm saying that that is in my opinion, that is a better system. I'm not trying to take your guns away. Hell no. I think guns are fun. We all love shooting guns. I like having a second penis. I'm just saying that, like, at the end of the day, if you look at how it works with Canada, this could be applied to the United States federally. You could have a federal program where you have to have a 2-day gun training program. You tax the gun producers and the weapons manufacturers, and then you get them to pay for it so poor people could afford this program.
Right, but you can't do that because gun ownership is a constitutional right. Or I should say, gun ownership is a human right guaranteed, protected against government infringement.
I'm all about training in schools. I think the public schools should have gun training for kids.
Like they used to.
Absolutely, yeah. Fucking Ian, this guy.
I would highly advocate for more training, but you're just suggesting that you can't force it on people?
The Constitution clearly, and according to the writings of the Founding Fathers and to, I think, Heller versus D.C., gun ownership is a human right, and the Constitution protects against government infringement of that right. That being said, we got the NFA, we got the updates to the NFA in the 80s, so certainly gun rights have been infringed to an absurd degree. You know what? Not to mention, back in the days when they codified the Constitution, people owned warships privately, and Halliburton, Northrop Grumman. Well, I shouldn't say Halliburton; they're a construction thing. But Northrop Grumman, Boeing, etc.
Lockheed.
These companies are private companies that build nuclear weapons. So we basically where we're at right now is that private corporations with no accountability can have the most powerful weapons of mass destruction.
Really, no accountability? And does Lockheed Martin build nuclear weapons? Is that true, or do they build nuclear weapon delivery systems?
In the world, but them and the government and like. So it doesn't follow. Either the people have the power or they don't have the power, right? We've abdicated it to corrupt organizations.
And corporations are not people.
Right.
Let's be clear. This regarding this dude that choked the guy out, I think what's going to come up is was it adequate force or was it too much? And I feel like if he had punched the guy directly in the face, that would have been worse. Because although, like if they got into a fist fight, because he could have fallen backward and hit his head. At least he was in control of the guy's body. It's really sad that the guy died, but I feel like this was like a very low level amount of force to apply to someone that was threatening to kill people or hurt people.
Why did 3 people find it necessary to try and stop this guy?
He was probably flailing.
Hold on, I'm curious actually for this. Does Lockheed Martin or private do private military contractors, do they build nuclear warheads, or do they just build like the delivery systems? That's what I'm curious. Who in the U.S. builds nuclear warheads? I assume it's a combo of all these companies. I'm just curious. I didn't even know if we were still making nuclear weapons, or nuclear warheads at least. The nuclear components of atomic weapons are designed by the Los Alamos NM Scientific Laboratory, which employs about 6,100 people. The chemical parts of the bombs and missile warheads are designed in conjunction with scientists at the 2 laboratories. Destiny, why wouldn't they? My guess would be that like enrichment of uranium and all of that to make it like to bring it up to weapons grade standards and everything, that would be like a government controlled or monitored process. It wouldn't just be random corporations doing it. That'd be my guess.
And kicking and screaming, who knows?
So it is hard because you mentioned there's no footage prior, but something happened that resulted in 3 New York people who are likely not conservatives to decide this man must be subdued.
Yeah.
3 people. Yeah. So when it comes to the idea of proportionality, I'm like, if 3 New Yorkers of all people were like, this guy's got to be stopped.
I could be wrong. That's just a guess.
Kind of crazy to me because, look, I'm a gun nut, right? My view is people have a right to defend themselves with a lot more force than people in New York do. But if people in New York felt they had to stop him, these people, I doubt these guys are conservative. There's like no conservatives live in New York. It's like 20% Republican, and if they are Republican, they're probably moderate right. Something must have happened. But I don't even need to sit here and say what could have or what must have. What we know, what we choose to believe, based on what the police, the media, and the witnesses have said, is that this guy was threatening people with violence and said he was prepared to lose his life over it. Three men then said this man must be subdued, and they subdued him. And then the guy died, which sucks. It's unfortunate.
Did he get a cause of death?
It was a compression of the neck. Yeah. Homicide.
So you've got a massive platform here. A lot of people watch you all the time. And so what you say, obviously, and advocate for is going to affect a lot of people's lives. If this is a problem that genuinely concerns you, why isn't it something that you would frame and want to advocate for more resources for mental health access and bring that up on a regular basis? And I'm not saying, and I'm sure, okay, hold on, Tim. I'm sure you've done it before. I'm sure you've had specials before. I'm what?
We do it a lot.
Okay. Why isn't that the focus? Why isn't today, hey, by the way, everybody, this horrifying tragedy happened on the New York subway. We got to talk about this. Yeah. Here's our angle. Our angle is we need to invest in mental health. We need to invest in giving access to public health care for Americans.
First of all, when it comes to the issue of violence in this country, conservatives have been screaming about mental health for decades.
Reagan is one of the ones that gutted the institutions in America.
Conservatives have been screaming about mental health for decades? What do we mean by that? What?
One of the worst presidents this country's ever had. No fault divorce. How about that shit?
Yeah,
gun control.
Yeah.
I don't know why Republicans like that guy.
The reason that they like him is because of the way that he stood up to communism. But I totally agree that he had a lot of really bad policies, and I'm not a stan.
But conservatives have taken the stance of gun violence and mass shootings as an issue of mental health, and then the left takes.
Lance, don't let him get away with that.
Conservatives will say mental health to protect their guns. Please stop. Oh no. Oh, that was so oof. I feel like I need to go take a shower. That was dirty. I can't believe he did that.
The opposing.
But do they invest in that? Do they vote for it?
Well, of course not. The Republican Party's garbage.
When I look up the votes of the Republican Party, they're not voting for amendments that are actually going to give people more access to mental health.
But look, man,
that's where you have an opportunity.
But you don't want to come onto a show where we say the Democratic and Republican Party should be dismantled and obliterated, and then make an argument that one side is bad. I'll sit here and be like, bro, if you want to have make a list of every single member of Congress who should be removed from office, I will put all of them but 4.
One problem is that when people advocate for mental health, a lot of that advocation is more drugs, that this new drug will fix your brain. But I'm of the belief that less drugs allow you to fix your... sometimes for very short periods of time, you might need something to help, but then you don't want people long-term. I don't want them on crazy pharmaceuticals that make them go,
Right. Well, and we have to bring up, often this medication actually increases suicidal ideation and aggressive...
Yeah. Often? Not compared to reducing suicidal ideation. That's why they oftentimes are prescribed for things like depression. Ooga booga. Ooh.
Thoughts and things like that. But I do want to answer your question. You said, why isn't that the subject of the show today?
Yeah, or the premise or the framing of it.
Because when we do talk about this stuff, on a normal day when news breaks of 25 people push in front of trains.
Sure.
Godsini's in chat because Lance is about to turn the up, just like Lycan said he would. Lance is about to bring this shit home. Oh my God.
Or a woman was raped on a train in Philadelphia, and we're sitting here saying, what is going on in these cities? What are the failed policies that are resulting in this? We talk about it all the time. Today, we're talking about the fact that protesters went out in New York and physically assaulted one of our friends and reporter because he simply filmed them, and they are demanding criminal charges of the guy who tried to stop the violent offense. See, that is a narco-tyranny. That when you have ongoing crime, when you have victimization, people being killed, and a woman being raped on a train, we talk for a year, 2 years, 3 years. When the riots happened in 2020, we had Michael Tracy's reporting showing all of the riots across the country and the mom and pop shops that were putting up signs saying, please don't hurt us. We talk about it nonstop. And then one day, someone on a train, 3 guys, say we must stop this man.
Conservatives only invoke
maybe
mental
because
health
they were
when
like,
it's very specific narratives. All other times they dismiss it as soft science.
Thanks. That's kind of what I just said. Thank you, buddy.
we've seen too many people die on these train tracks before. And now we've got leftist protesters saying that guy should go to prison for it. And AOC calling it a public murder. I'm like, yo, AOC, I didn't see you call out the public murder in the subway trains. And again, maybe it's ignorance. But the problem I see is, this is why I refer to the left as NPCs or a cult. There is complete ignorance to the problem ongoing, and then a hyperpolarization in a single moment in the wrong direction, which makes the problem worse.
You know what's so wild is the other side feels the exact same way.
Except we're not conservatives.
The opposite direction.
Except we're not conservatives.
The exact same.
You see, that's the problem.
Is it all right if I jump in with something, all right? Because I've been reluctant.
He's a conservative. He's a moon lord, and I'm a traditionalist.
I've been reluctant to interject because I don't want to just dogpile. And so I didn't want to get in on it.
Oh no,
I'm
here
part of that argument.
For the dog pile. I signed
you're
up.
Not. I promise.
I'm sitting
I
in
promise
chair,
you're not.
right? This is where Ye sat. Did Ye sit here? No, I'm here for the dog pile.
So
let's do this.
I think when you talk about mental health and trying to solve the problem of mental health in this country, that is a deceptively simple way of putting it, right? Every single person in this room would have a very different idea of how that problem should be solved. And I agree with you that right now Republicans aren't doing a whole lot to talk about mental health issues, at least with respect to whatever mental health issue that this specific person is dealing with.
But
New York
is not a Republican place.
No. I totally agree with that too. But I'm saying he was saying, why don't Republicans do more to advocate for mental health treatment? My point, however, is that I think the kind of advocacy you'd see from conservatives on how to solve the problem of bad mental health in the United States would be a much different set of policy prescriptions than you would want. So one example of this, right?
Actually, what Ian said.
And there's a number of different directions you could take this in. My fundamental belief is that we live in a culture that encourages man to live in ways that man is not meant to live, and you just see negative health outcomes from that, both mental and physical. However, when you look at traditional psychological definitions of mental illness and how we used to treat it, back in the 1950s, you had about 500,000 people in the United States in insane asylums. By the 1980s, it's about 100,000. Okay, so without even adjusting for the increase in population size, there's a significantly lower number of people who are committed. And part of that is because the requirement to get somebody committed involuntarily to a mental health facility at that time was they can't take care of themselves. Today, they have to demonstrate that they are a danger to themselves and others first before they can be committed. Now, is someone not being able to take care of themselves necessarily the perfect indicator of whether they need to be committed to one of these institutions? I have no idea. However, what I do know is once we push the goalpost all the way in the other direction and say they have to...
Is he saying we need to be like committing en masse people in the United States? Wait, what?
Demonstrate that they are a significant danger to themselves or others. Oftentimes they don't get committed until after they've already hurt somebody. So it's a much more complicated situation than saying we just have to throw more money at this system when we don't even have a solid definition of what good mental health is, and also at which point someone should be committed.
So I think the important point, going back to what I agree.
Interesting.
This is not a conservative show, but if you are in a cult, you wouldn't know that. You would only hear what the cult says.
So here's what I have to respond to that. If an objective person, say an alien, just showed up and looked at your channel, Tim, and went through all the videos, and you were to ask them, poll them, is this person and his views, where would you place them? Most likely they would say conservative. That's going to be my bet.
That's actually wrong.
Yes.
But more because the guests that come on tend to identify.
Not just even the guests, but the way they're framed, the thumbnail.
He needs to land. I'm giving you all this framework, okay? You guys need to be doing this. It's populist and like anti-populist, or like establishment and anti-establishment. That's where a lot of these political paradigms are falling on today. Because Tim probably wouldn't be considered traditionally like a conservative. He probably wouldn't be, but he has a ton of anti-establishment takes. But considering that liberals and progressives generally want to build an establishment, it's easy to confuse a populist, anti-establishment conservative or a centrist or whatever for just like a conservative person. Is Tim right-wing though? Probably not in like a traditional sense. probably not. But it's just so much easier to just nail them down on the anti-establishment thing. Because if you call him conservative, he's probably going to give you like 10 different reasons why he's not, right? It's just not worth it, you know?
The words that you put in red and whether or not you're supporting.
Yeah, the issue is that Lance himself is probably somewhat anti-establishment too, and he doesn't want to recognize how much in common he and Tim have. That's why when people will come onto these shows, like Lance, and they're like, oh, well, I'm left and you're right, we're going to disagree. And then as soon as Tim Pool utters something like, well, we hate both parties, and Lance is like, oh, me too, I also hate both political parties, oh! And they realize, oh, actually, you two guys are a lot more similar than you think.
Or going against either the Democrats or the Republicans, but hey, you tell me that you guys don't like the Democrats and you don't like the Republicans. This is not a Republican stream. You don't want to even endorse Republicans in any way, shape, or form, or vote.
Most conservative people today aren't considered traditionally conservative either. That's kind of true-ish, yeah, because of the Trump mind break, basically. But the Republicans in the Republican Party are on a journey of self-discovery right now. And we'll see where they end up when they've figured themselves out. We're still not too sure where they're gonna wind up at.
For them, I don't. Big no.
I don't vote on party lines we do personally.
Okay, sure. But there's a lot of right wingers who watch you, right? So that's what I mean when I say you do have a voice and you do have an audience of right wingers who are going to vote at one point or another. 30% of your audience is right wing.
Most of the people who watch this, the largest faction is libertarian.
Okay.
The next largest would be considered traditional liberal. Oh no, I think.
But along party lines, who are the libertarians going to vote for? Not the Libertarian Party. Most likely, they're going to vote for whoever.
When they come on this show and say abolish the police.
One of the two, Republican or Libertarian.
Yeah, most likely,
usually.
yes, one of the two. So that's why I say, Tim, for the people who watch you who are Republican leaning, why not frame it that way for them so that they can actually start pushing more money into that?
That's why I'm here.
That's
basically true, I think, in a lot of ways.
That's what Moon Lord does.
So here's what I think. I think you're in a cult, right? I think the cult is derived from algorithms on social media.
Okay.
So you only surround yourself with this loud noise. We saw a really good example of this with that Sisson guy. Is that his name? Harry?
I don't know.
Harry Sisson, yeah.
Sisson. Those two guys went on the Tim Dillon podcast and he said, please, no, don't clip this.
Okay.
I will lose followers. I can rag on Trump all the time and people still watch the show. Seamus and I can have an argument over me being pro-choice and him being pro-life and people still watch the show. And if I pull up all sides with 3,770 ratings, Tim Pool is a centrist. But you think I'm conservative because you live in a bubble, right?
Because I'm too far left, the Overton window is too far away, is what you're saying?
Yes, so when I go hang out in Washington, D.C.,
right.
And I go to National Harbor or I go to Baltimore, Maryland Life. I'm in Baltimore.
I don't know why you do that. Washington, D.C.?
The people who come up to me and are like, hey, man, I'm a big fan, are not conservatives. They hate Donald Trump. In fact, I was at a poker table last week and a guy said, I just hate Donald Trump. Man, I can't stand him. I wish somebody else would run, but I can't vote for Joe Biden. I think you're surrounded. We talk about this quite a bit.
Sure.
If all sides has nearly 4,000 people rating me and the end result is centrist, if I'm actively pro-universal health care, not to the same degree as Bernie Sanders, I believe in private health insurance, and I'm pro-choice, I am absolutely not a conservative in this country.
I've listened to your debates on pro-choice, though. You're pro-choice from a Tim Pool's perspective.
I'm pro-choice from a traditional liberal perspective, as traditional liberals have been.
Not from what people who would define themselves as pro-choice would say, right? You concentrate very heavily on the 9th month abortions and baby guillotines and stuff like that.
What?
Yeah. I remember watching you debate
baby guillotines?
Yeah. Okay, so baby guillotines is my own personal interpretation and joke of it. But you were talking about how women, how disgusted you are that women may have an abortion in the 9th month, right? Or even
a viable baby.
That's going to be a position held by 90% of people, by the way. That is if you want a tip, hey, if there's any Democratic strategist, political strategy people out there that are looking for free advice on how to run your shit, third term abortion, leave it the alone. Literally, nobody likes it. Nobody in this country likes third term abortion, third trimester abortion. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. Democrats don't like it. Republicans don't like it. Nobody likes it. Drop that shit, okay? Fight for first trimester if you want, maybe second trimester. Nobody likes third trimester abortion. As soon as 9-month abortion comes up, all you say is oof, yeah, that's pretty bad. Probably don't want that happening. That's it. It's an insanely edgy and edge case position. Very, very, very few people support, even the Democratic Party, support third trimester abortion. That's a wild position.
Of a viable baby. I wanted to scream at that time, being women who have abortions in the 9th month, they're not doing that because they got bored or all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't care anymore. They do that because it's a tragedy. Like, statistically, women who are getting abortions in the 9th month, it's because there's a medical complication.
Also, stop bringing up the medical complication thing, because 99% of even conservatives will agree with this. Even my mom agrees with this, who's like, my mom, I think, would be a single issue abortion voter. And even she'll say, Stevie, it's not an abortion then, it's about saving one life and you can only pick one. That's different, Stevie. Even the craziest conservative will concede that in the case of the mother's life being at risk, it's probably okay to have an abortion. It is such a fringe, for you to inhabit such a fringe position and then attack like an equally fringe position is so stupid. Oh my God.
That could kill them. That's why they have to do it. What do you
false
mean
argument?
False. That's the real world.
I already said viable. Try again.
What are you talking about, Tim?
I already said abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months.
This is ridiculous.
Do you know what viable means?
Yes.
It means the baby can survive on its own without medical complications.
Absolutely. And
why legalize abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months when the baby could just be delivered?
Women are not getting abortions at the 9th month for pleasure or because they want to suddenly do it for kicks. No, that doesn't happen. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy of the highest. Because there are medical operations that could kill the mother and they need to get an abortion.
Why legalize?
I just told you. That's the reason why.
So all right, I'll try and break it down for you. Can the baby survive? Let's talk about a baby. The baby can survive on its own, yes?
Sure.
Okay. Abortion is defined by Planned Parenthood and the law as terminating the life of the baby.
Correct.
Why terminate the life of the baby if it can survive on its own?
Because it could kill both of them. That's why it is done at that stage.
So how do you
kill one or the other, and they have to make the tough decision at that point.
So how do you remove the fully formed 9-month baby at that point?
Oh, I don't know the science of it. I've never performed that operation before.
So shouldn't the law then be, if the baby must be removed and it is alive and capable of survival, all actions must be taken to preserve the life of the child and the mother?
And again, I think even Judith Thompson, who wrote the big paper, would probably agree with this position. And it's an easy position to agree with. Fine, if you have to do an early delivery or whatever for an 8 or 9 month pregnancy, okay. But obviously care should be taken to save the life of the baby, right?
I would say they'd probably choose the mother first, right?
Why?
He's saying if they deliver a healthy, like...
And this is such a strange scenario. How often do you think that this happens and all of a sudden they're like, the baby could have lived. You could have done it. Why did you choose the other option? It's like, this is a tragedy of the highest order because they want to have the kid. At 9 months pregnant, a woman is on her way to give birth. So it's like, it's the worst possible fucking thing that can happen to her.
That's not always, again, I said I didn't want to dogpile, but that's it's statistically not true. There have been surveys done on women who had later abortions, and for a pretty large sum of them, it's because they were not sure whether the father of the child was willing to commit, and then when they found out he wasn't willing to commit, they would have the abortion. And so there are different stats you're going to find for different points in pregnancy. When it comes all the way along to 9 months, I don't have the statistical data on that. However, I do know for later term abortions, there are reasons other than what is traditionally considered to be a medically necessary reason. For example, some people will say that a negative mental health outcome is a reason to abort a child later in pregnancy. So if the woman is depressed, they will list that as a reason for why the child had to be terminated to save the life of the mother, which is certainly not the case, very obviously. And to the point of what Tim is saying, when we say there's no such thing as a medically necessary abortion, the principle behind that is, if there is an operation which is necessary to save the life of the mother, and then she miscarries the child as a result of that operation, which was necessary to save her life, that's not an abortion because nobody's intent was to go in there and end the life of the unborn child. And so if a woman's having complications where she has to deliver early, you deliver the child early, of course. And if you're at a point in pregnancy where the child isn't viable, that's a horrible tragedy. You still do what you can to save the child, but you can't always save the child, and we understand that. But to go in and rip the child apart to end their life is never something which is medically required, even though an early delivery may be.
But are there situations where if the baby is in, this is so harsh, in its complete form, that even trying to induce early pregnancy could kill the mother, so they have to break the baby's body apart so that they can get out without killing the mother?
I've never heard of such a thing. So
I'm sure that can happen.
There are letters, by the way,
Come
signed by literally thousands of doctors who have said
let me ask.
Can I just say one thing? So 88% of abortions are in the first 12 weeks.
Yes.
88.
Yeah.
88% of abortions.
True.
Less than...
This is another reason why it's so easy to not defend third trimester abortions, because nobody even wants them. Okay, very few people. It's such a rare type of abortion to even happen. There's just no reason to defend it. There's no reason for it.
1.3% of abortions take place near the 8th or 9th month.
How many abortions
is that? Guttmacher?
Well, how many is that?
I don't know the actual numbers. This is the percentages.
13,000.
Okay, but we're talking about less than 1.3%.
Hold on, 13,000. That's the number of people who die from gun violence in the U.S. each year that aren't suicides.
Gentlemen,
so that's
I am
13,
not here
000.
to justify abortion when it happens as in it's a good thing.
No.
I don't celebrate it.
You're saying it doesn't happen.
No.
You're saying
I've never said it doesn't happen.
13,000 times.
I said it's extremely. There is 338 million Americans. I'm sorry. The numbers are going to be a little daunting. Yes, the numbers will be high. I'm not here to celebrate that.
I don't understand your argument then.
My argument is that there's a lot of human beings.
If 13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem, right?
If 13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem. Yes, of course.
If 13,000 late-term abortions happen, is that a problem?
These are completely different things.
Well, how so?
Okay, so if someone dies by a gun, have they been shot? Were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it a suicide?
Oh no, Lance.
Was it a gang violence thing? Who knows?
That's a good question.
Can I clarify? I don't want to argue. I just want to clarify.
I need to answer this. In the case of yes, but in the case of late-term abortions, more often than not, when statistics say, and when they are polled, they say the reason that they are giving it is because it's a medical complication that could result in the death of the mother or the child.
Right. So let's. Can we make the argument then that the use of guns on people are allowed?
The use of guns of people are allowed.
To end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No. I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens according to the stats based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
No. Hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to.
When Lance is dancing around this and keeps saying the medical necessity thing, it makes it seem like he doesn't want to answer the question because
9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision. Yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question. You're
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado's specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason, they could just decide that
elective, yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it does. But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
Hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Wait, hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it? And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
We're talking about the removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would if they ask,
I don't think they should. What, bro? That's not what we're asking. What you think they should do?
I mean, if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no, but she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does.
Oh, my God.
And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable?
Nobody is saying if it's a good idea.
No, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body. But bodily autonomy doesn't stop at my morality. Tim, it's not my choice. Right? It's not my, yes, but that's not my choice.
Why kill it? Why kill it?
That's her choice, not mine.
Why kill the baby?
Ask her. Ask her.
Okay, so my point is simply this. You don't need to be shocked by it. You are allowed to have that moral position. I think most people in America would prescribe that to be, would ascribe evil to that.
Sure, but that's the idea. You can describe evil to whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your choice.
The idea that you would say
doesn't mean that she should
the woman
legally be restricted.
wants the baby removed, and then in the process, instead of letting the baby live, remove it but kill it, right? There's no reason to do that. You can give the baby up for adoption. You can drop the baby off on the doorstep of a post office.
I agree with you. I'm not disputing
So why
that.
legalize? Even if it's one, why legalize? You see, this is the craziest thing.
Because her autonomy should not be cut off based on your morality. Because you don't think that idea is good. You don't like it.
But the baby's been removed from her body.
Well, that's if it was removed from her body and it was still viable, right? And that's where the baby guillotines come in, because I don't think this happens. I don't think women on the 9th month get abortions with viable living children and then be like, I don't want it, kill it. I don't think that happens.
You don't have to think it happens, but statistically it does, because your entire argument is this only happens for reasons of the health of the mother or the health of the unborn child.
I said
so you believe
I said the statistics show that at the 9th month, if a woman is going to have an abortion, it's typically because it's a medical complication.
It's pronounced with an L in Britain and probably Canada. He's in America, and in America we say guillotine, bitches.
Could either endanger her or the child's life.
And what I am saying is there are doctors who will justify that by saying the medical complication is she is depressed. That is literally one of the reasons given in surveys of women. And another reason that is given is that I didn't know if the man who I was going to be with.
Okay, but Seamus, I got to stop you because this is a nebulous argument that doesn't get anywhere, and I can respect the point that if you go to a left, if you try and look this.
By the way, this is one of the reasons why I'll do a little cringy debate lawyer thing. This is one of the reasons why debate probably is important, even though we even all say oh yeah, debating is kind of cringe, haha. I just say that to make you lose your trip out of yourself. One of the reasons why debate is important is because at least you get to hear some of the counter arguments to positions that you hold, so that you think through them a little bit more. Because something that's pretty obvious here is Lance is getting, these are pretty softball easy questions. These are kind of things that if you'd ever talked to anybody in your entire life about these issues, this would have come up in an argument. When Lance can't think about how to talk around a 9-month abortion, it's what it tells me is you've never spoken to anybody in your entire life that has disagreed with your position, because these are the first questions that would come up, right? Imagine somebody comes out on stage and they're like, my position is you should never be allowed to kill somebody, and then somebody's like, what if somebody's about to kill you? And you're like, ooh, that's a really good point. Fuck, I don't know, let me think about it. These are I call these level 1 objections. These are things where even if you shot the shit with another friend that was pretty ideologically aligned with you, these would probably come up in ordinary discourse, in normal conversation. And the fact that you're not ready for these level 1 conversation topics, yeah, oof. I think the most charitable read of Lance's argument is that making 9-month abortions illegal is going to have the doctors err against doing them, even when they have sufficient medical reason for doing so. Charlie Bard, but do you understand? He doesn't know that argument, because you are onto something. Here's a little cheat code. If you want to be a radical, and I don't know if you should make these arguments, but if you want to, there actually is a good reason for 9th month abortions, okay? 9th month abortions, 3rd trimester abortions, and I'll give it to you. Here you go, okay? Let's say that we make a ruling, we make a world where we say, hey, the only types of abortions that should be allowed are in the 1st trimester and maybe 2nd trimester. 3rd trimester abortions should only be allowed in times of grave medical danger. Boom, we passed that law. Okay, well, what happens? Woman goes into a hospital, she says, hey, I think I'm having complications, I need to have an abortion ASAP, or there's gonna be huge problems. Doctor goes to look at her and she goes, okay, well, hey, you're in the 8th month of your pregnancy. We're having some huge problems here. There could be a delay, or there could be extra medical screening that you need to do to pass a threshold set by a law, such that women are actually dying now because the doctor has to validate that there's an authentic medical reason in order for her to have that abortion. Or there might be some things that are edge cases where it's you could probably deliver, but you've got a 25 or 30% chance of some fatal complication happening. Are you allowed to kill them at that point? Are you allowed to have an abortion at that point, right? This is your only, in my opinion, this is your only good argument for a 3rd trimester abortion. But Lance doesn't know this argument. I don't know if he's even heard this argument before, because in his circles, he probably just thinks, oh, abortion, her body, her choice, her body, her choice, her body, her choice. And that's all he's ever, he doesn't even know this argument, right? But that, if you wanted to defend a 3rd trimester abortion, that's the only reasonable argument that you could deploy, I think, to defend it.
Up, you're going to find left-wing sources and right-wing sources that will contradict each other. So my question is strictly on the legality of terminating the life of a child. I can sit here and pull up, oh, hey, here's one. Women abort Down syndrome babies late term rather frequently. I think that's wrong. I don't think that someone's life is forfeit because they have Down syndrome. But your argument is that they do.
No, it's not. That's a strong.
No. Your argument is that women have a right to terminate a baby for any reason at any point.
Yes, they should have the bodily autonomy to make that decision.
So what I'm saying is, in the circumstance of Down syndrome, I think it is wrong to terminate a baby's life at 9 months simply for having Down syndrome, but you would agree she is legally allowed to do so.
I think she should be legally allowed to do so. Whether or not I think that's a good idea is irrelevant.
Well,
then it is irrelevant. So why did you just bring it up?
There's the clarification. I think it should be illegal.
Okay.
I think
so there are limits to how much bodily autonomy women should have.
So yes, right.
So that's your stance.
The pro-choice argument.
See, like Lance, you guys aren't seeing this, okay? But I see this because I see everything. Lance is asking these questions like these are vampire slayer questions. So you think that women should have a limit to their bodily autonomy? Yes. Oh. Okay. And he's like, because in his circles, you ask a question like that, and I'm guessing it shuts down the conversation. Like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. I would never want to limit a woman's bodily autonomy. Oh, no. Like, in his circles, that's probably, like, the killer question. Anyway, but, like, reasonable people will bite bullets on this. We limit people's autonomy all the time. And most people are okay with limiting a woman's bodily autonomy, even when she's pregnant. Hello? Consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, smoking tobacco, doing crazy shit that might endanger a pregnancy. There are tons of ways that we limit a woman's autonomy when she's pregnant. Like,
because you're pro-abortion, right?
Sure.
Pro-choice traditionally in this country put limits at around like 15 to 16 weeks, meaning if the baby is dependent upon the body of the mother, then it is the body of the mother and she has final say. If the baby is viable, it can be removed in a process that ends the pregnancy but doesn't end the life of the baby. That's kind of like the compromise where the baby gets to live and the woman no longer has to be pregnant.
Yeah, the thing that sucks is that, like, for as much as he's a loser nowadays, Vosh did a much better job at doing this show, and I don't even know. It's so hard to, why? Hold on, I'm trying to think. Normally Vosh comes off as smug to me, but Lance comes off as more smug. But I don't think he is more smug than Vosh. So why does... Oh, I know why. Vosh comes off as smug to me because Vosh is kind of smug. Lance comes off as worse to me because he's smug and stupid. Vosh isn't stupid. When Vosh did his episode with Charlie Kirk, maybe he comes off a little condescending, but he didn't sound like an idiot. And I think... I think Lance has that issue.
There seems to be this amoral argument where, well, but it just killed the baby anyway, which doesn't make any logical sense. That's the pro-abortion side. So if you go back to the 90s, if you go back to safe, legal, rare, etc., if you even look at Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, that's where I'm at. Conservatives are pro-life outright. Seamus would argue abortion in any capacity should be banned entirely. I'm in the traditional Democrat position. But you see, there is a tribal, amoral, illogical position of just let them kill the baby regardless. I don't see any logic there. I don't see how that makes sense morally or ethically or just mathematically.
Right. So you said I'm pro-abortion. What I'm against is forced birth, and I don't think the state should be forcing women to give birth against their will, which is what your position and your position is.
Like look at all these like little return. Oh, you're in favor of forced birth. You're in favor, like, motherfucker. The baby's coming out of the body one way or another. Okay, whether you evacuate the pregnancy, whether you C-section the motherfucker out, or whether she delivers naturally, the baby's coming out of the body. Whatever you like, forced birth is the biological realist position. It's coming out, okay? Unless the woman crushes her stomach and reabsorbs the baby back into herself like some weird fucking slime absorption fetish thing, okay? Like,
So I'm against that. I think that's creepy big government shit. I don't think they should be forcing them and turning them into these viable wombs against their will.
I completely agree.
This is rhetorically effective. I think this is rhetorically effective on people on the far left, but I don't know if it's rhetorically effective on people in the center or the right. But who knows? I could be wrong.
I'm against forced birth, just like you.
Cool.
Except my difference is that if the baby's at 8 months and can survive, they can take the baby out as if they would have an abortion, but not kill it in the process.
If it's a viable at 8 months, is it viable?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is viable at 8 months, dude. There have been babies after 20 weeks.
Bro, your whole position is that women have a right to kill the baby even if they end the pregnancy, and there's no logic there.
The logic is that I don't think you agree with forced birth at a point.
How?
How at 8 months? At 8 months, Tim Pool thinks forced birth is fucking cool and poggies.
Stop making up stupid bullshit.
But
dude.
hold on. That's what this is.
Bro. Nonsense statement. Because I already said I agree with you. A woman should be able to end her pregnancy whenever she wants. A woman could end her pregnancy whenever she wants. Say it. Tim Pool said a woman can end her pregnancy whenever she wants.
Yeah, I demand you
aborting
say
and giving birth are both ending a pregnancy.
Make up something fake. Tim Pool agrees with forced birth is a false statement. You're lying. I have already said I believe that women have a right to terminate their pregnancy up to a certain amount of time.
At 8 months is where you draw the line.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you just said that. If the baby is viable, that she shouldn't have the right to be able to terminate it.
To kill the baby.
Yes.
I said she can end the pregnancy whenever she wants.
And ending the pregnancy can be giving birth or aborting the baby.
Or a C-section that keeps the baby alive.
She has to be forced to give birth against her will in a C-section, but the baby is viable and they give it off.
So how do they remove the baby?
So hold on.
at 8
either way,
months?
the baby comes out of her. You're saying that
so you literally want forced birth. You literally want to force women to give birth against their will.
So can I just interject here?
You're saying they should use the tools to rip apart the body and pull that out. Whereas I'm saying they should just take the baby out.
I'm saying she should have the right to decide what happens to her body. That's it.
Okay, but either way, the child is coming out. You're making this argument about forced birth. Either way, what is in her body is going to be outside of it. The question is it okay to shove forceps into the skull of the small person who's inside of her and then tear them apart limb by limb to get them out? Or should we say, no, that's not an acceptable way of delivering a baby. You shouldn't kill that unborn child. How is that for either way it comes out of her body? Yes. Either way the child comes out of her body. It's not as if there's one scenario where the pregnancy magically disappears and doesn't leave the body.
Let me add, forced birth is a nonsense politics statement.
But in your scenario, she's being forced to give birth against her will. Like she can't decide.
Already pregnant, dude.
I know.
Yes. We're not talking about forcing her to do anything. She's pregnant.
But then endorse that position.
I did.
Stick by it.
I know. I reject there's no such thing as forced birth. They're saying you can't kill that baby.
Let me tell you how fascinating this is.
Because she has the baby inside her.
Is so fervent about legalizing the killing of a baby at 9 months that I can sit here and say I think women should be able to terminate their pregnancy whenever they want, but if the baby is viable, there's no reason to kill it.
She has to be forced to give it then. She has to be forced to give birth and then give the baby up, is what you're saying.
Give birth. Define.
Yes. Okay. So that is forced birth, right? So she can't decide to terminate it at 8 or 9 months.
Define give birth.
You just said at 8 months if the baby is viable.
I didn't say 8 months. Define give birth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying by forced birth. What does birth mean?
You just said when she is at 8 or 9 months. Okay, so she's at 8 or 9.
I said viable.
Okay, so it's viable. The baby's viable. She should have to give birth to it in some capacity. C-section, whatever.
Define birth, and I can answer your question.
Birth. The removal of a child into the world from a mother's womb.
So how do they do that?
The woman pushes the baby out.
So then what would you call an abortion at 8 months? Is the woman pushing the baby out?
No, it's most likely a medical procedure done by a doctor.
And what is that medical procedure?
An abortion.
But what is that?
What is an abortion?
Yes, like what?
How is it done?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how it's done at 8 months. I know earlier on it's usually done with a series of tools. I don't know how it's done at 8 or 9 months.
Okay, so your moral argument is forced birth. I'm trying to understand what your position is. If you don't know how an abortion is done, then are you in favor of forced birth?
Am I in favor of forced? No, I'm against forced birth.
But you think that women should have to expel the baby, right?
It's completely fine for me not to know the medical procedure of how abortion is done to stand up for the rights of a woman's body. I don't need to know how people perform abortions directly. I'm not going to lie here. I'm not going to pretend.
Removing a baby from a woman's body is birth.
Oh, so you're saying it doesn't count?
No.
It's birth of a different nature.
I don't think you have a definition, and I'm trying to understand what you mean by forced birth. But if you can't define the removal of the baby in a different way, I don't know what you're saying.
Birth, Tim, like the birth of a child.
So is a C-section a birth?
Sure. Yes, it is a form of
wow, God,
extracting a living child that is viable to live in the real world.
What?
That's how you define birth. Extracting a living child to live in the real world.
No, I would define birth as someone giving birth. They are pushing the baby out of their body.
So I don't think women should be forced to do that, right?
You don't think women should be forced to push babies out of their body?
But the baby is in their body, so it's got to come out somehow.
So you're going to take it out with a C-section?
No, I don't know. Okay. But I'm trying to figure out what you mean by this.
So that would be forced birth. So she's forced to give and make a viable child live in the real world.
I mean, so when you're pregnant, the baby. Wouldn't a C-section be birth? Yeah, I would say so. Giving birth is like a colloquial term. We probably say like C-section, normal delivery, anything that involves like the baby coming to your body that's not like killing the baby. We'd probably say roughly speaking is like giving birth, right?
It's going to come out of you at some point.
That's the
Either
point.
we rip
no
it
matter
apart
what
or
happens,
you give birth
the baby
naturally.
is coming out of the woman, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's no being in favor of that or not. It happens. Period.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your point?
What's my point?
Am I in favor of a natural process?
People do this all the time when I'm having debates where I'll ask myself, okay, so what do you mean by that?
And they'll go, beneficial if both go into it with good faith.
What do I mean by that?
Their position, otherwise it's brainless talking points and trying to score points in the debate.
Good one. When people do that thing where they like ask you the same question again, like you're like, what do you mean by killing? It's like, what do I mean by killing? When people do that, it drives me crazy because it feels like they're just stalling for time and they know they have like no good response to what I'm saying. It absolutely drives me crazy.
Process by which a woman has to have a baby removed from her no matter what anyone says or does?
Your point is that at 8 or 9 months, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tim.
You are wrong. Yes, I'll stop you right there because when you keep saying 8 or 9 months, that's not what I said over and over and over again.
Viability is after 6 months.
Viability is.
Okay, that means that there's more than a 50% chance
you're also wrong. It's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby
it's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby is viable, Tim, as soon as the baby is viable, then it's okay for the woman, even if she doesn't want to have it anymore for whatever reason, she should have to be forced to have it extracted from her and then live. Is that correct? Is that your position?
Well, it's not forcing the woman to have a baby live if the baby's already alive. You see what I'm saying? Like,
right. So you're okay. Here's semantics.
I got a compromise for you. I got a compromise for you. We'll tell the mother we killed it, but we'll sneak it off and give it to someone else. Does that work for you?
No, because I still think she should have autonomy. She should have the right to do it if she wants to. Of course.
She should kill the baby after it's already born?
I don't want her to kill a baby. I want her to have,
Why do you keep saying it?
Because I want her to have the ability to choose. That's different, and that is a fundamental part of this.
The baby's out of her body, right?
Forcibly. In your scenario.
No. Let's say 24 weeks. The woman goes to the doctor and says, I want this baby out of me. And
what if she says, I don't want to have this baby?
I don't want to have this baby. Okay. And the doctor says, I will remove it.
Okay.
Uh-oh, the baby's alive. What do we do?
So you forced her to give birth?
No. She said, doctor, I'd like an abortion. He says, you got it. Step right up.
He's lying to her.
No. He does the abortion and it fails. And
an abortion is terminating a pregnancy. So there's no such thing as a trick abortion. You can't trick.
They're called failed abortions.
Failed abortions?
Yes.
Where doctors trick women into taking their babies out?
No. So when they perform the abortion, as Seamus explained, they stick metal tools into the brain, scramble it up, and rip its body parts apart, and then pull it out chunk by chunk.
Okay.
When the babies are smaller, sometimes they pull them out, but the babies don't die; they survive. Right. So my question is, in the instance of a failed abortion, what should be done?
A failed abortion being that the child is living; it's outside of the mother.
Yeah.
At that point, you cannot kill that child. That would be murder.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God. Jesus.
Agreed on that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, where does the mother's choice come in to kill?
Before that procedure takes place.
So
she has a choice to choose what she wants to have done with her body. If she goes to a doctor and the doctor's like, I'm going to perform an abortion, which the assumption would be that I'm about to terminate the child, but then he just secretly sneaks the child out of there, that's not performing an abortion. You're just being deceptive.
Yeah, and the doctor should go to prison if they did something like that, in my opinion.
I think he should go to prison if he performed an abortion.
Snap.
Yeah.
I heard that. Not surprised.
Opposite perspective.
So there's also something that none of us know, because I don't think any of us are medical doctors, the difference on the physiology of the female body giving a 9-month abortion, having that happen, or the actual birthing process, whether by C-section or natural birth. It might have vastly different consequences on the female body. So that's something to take into account.
So wait. Remember the Born Alive Act?
Yes.
That was a Republican position, wasn't it? What was that?
Yeah, so there have been a couple of different Born Alive Acts in different years. But what they basically say is that if the abortion fails, it is not legal to kill the child.
Wasn't that Republicans were trying to pass a law?
The Republicans were trying to pass that. That was one of the only things Obama voted on in the Senate. He voted against it.
Obama voted against it? But you would be in favor of that?
In favor of what?
The Born Alive Act.
I'm not completely familiar with it, so I have to read
if an infant is born alive after an attempted abortion, it has the same protection of law and degree as a newborn.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, because at that point it's a human. If you're killing a person that is alive outside of a womb, then that's murder, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask you, this is not a gotcha.
We agree on that. That's great.
I want to ask in good faith. So,
yeah, of course.
Do you believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights?
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body.
Hold on. What about meth?
Should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess DCFS would be...
Oh, it's her body, though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal. Period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it with a child or without a child.
Why would you? Do you see well, aren't drugs illegal?
Not in Oregon.
Methylene dioxide, MDMA. It's a
Maybe
type
it's
of meth.
alcohol.
Wait,
then.
sorry, what?
Not crystal meth.
Crystal meth
There's
is legal in
different
Oregon?
kinds
No,
of-
it's
not crystal.
Hold on a second.
MDMA is a kind of meth. Methylenedioxy, methamphetamine is ecstasy. That's a kind of meth. There's also crystal meth, which is not legal. MDMA is legal in some places for therapy sessions. I don't know if it's legal for
Yes.
I don't think MDMA is legal anywhere, is it? Or maybe like decriminalized in some states.
very
It
pregnant
is.
women.
Okay, it is.
Is it for pregnant women? I
Oregon
don't know.
decriminalized possession in 2021.
you were right.
But I don't know if
But
that's...
I'm just okay, dude.
Oh my God! Does Temple really let him walk away from that? No shot. Did he really let him do that?
So like,
decriminalizing possession is different than legalizing crystal meth. You know those two things are completely different, right?
What's the question of whether you can press charges?
Hold on.
Yeah.
What would a good answer be to this question? Your opinion? The position is incoherent. Or Lance's position is incoherent. So I don't know. I don't know what the Lance's position is incoherent. So I don't know what his answer could possibly be here. I feel like he can't possibly have an answer. I said it wasn't a good one before, but I think it is a good answer. I think you can actually consider, where a future person will be. So for instance, if I put an anvil somewhere and I know that a person's going to be stepping under it 10 minutes from now, and I put it there and I know it's going to fall in 10 minutes, it's probably immoral for me to put the anvil there, right? Even if there's not a person right there now, because I'm setting that person up for future harm, essentially, right? Now, if there's not going to be a person there, then, I can set an anvil up wherever I want. However, and I think that's comparable to doing meth while you're pregnant, right? If you are, if you're pregnant and you know you're going to be delivering a baby and you're doing meth, you're harming a future person. Like you're doing things that you know are intentionally causing harm to a future person, or negligently, I guess, causing harm to a future person. So I think it would be immoral to do it. But I don't know how Lance argues any of these things at all. So.
What? So when you decriminalize a small amount of drugs, that means if you're caught with that drugs by a cop, that means if you're arrested, you cannot be charged for 1 gram, 2 grams, whatever that is.
That's what legalizing is.
No, this is decriminalization, not legalization. We never said legalization.
Legalization is a semantic term. It doesn't mean anything.
Yes, it means that there's no longer a prohibition on that product.
Okay, so if a woman does meth, she's legally allowed to have it, right?
Is she legally allowed to do it or possess it?
I mean, what's the difference?
Well, two very different things. You can be legally allowed to possess drugs and not be legally allowed to take drugs.
Semantic arguments.
Alcohol.
So if she does alcohol.
Can a woman chug a fifth of vodka while pregnant?
Dare me to drive?
Yeah, she can legally.
But do you think she has a right to do so?
I think she has a right to do. Yes, she has a right to do it. I don't agree with it.
Okay.
If meth while pregnant is bad, then how is abortion ever okay? Abortion is next level harmful to the fetus. Abortion is preventing the creation of a person. Meth is causing harm to a future person. Two different things.
Yeah.
And heroin?
It's illegal.
I don't think heroin's illegal. I think heroin actually was legalized. I think it's controlled, but I think that one specifically was.
How do these guys not know anything about drugs? Hold on. What do you mean legalized? Because it's controlled. Controlled by definition is usually how we say illegal. The DEA has a scheduling for substances. A Schedule 1 drug, or Schedule 2, Schedule 3. Drugs that are scheduled are considered illegal drugs generally, right? Like you need a prescription to use them. That's why we call them illegal. Like, I mean, you can get illegal drugs if they're prescribed to you, but that's when we say illegal, that's what we mean. Like, I don't understand what we're talking about here.
Was oxycodone and other drugs. So
she has a right to do it. Whether or not I agree with her doing it, that's completely different. I don't agree with a woman who would have an elective abortion at 9 months. I think that is like, why the fuck would you have done that? But I think she has the right to do it, right?
But do you think it's ethical that she like?
Oh, I don't think it's ethical. No, of course not.
Because some.
Wait, what? So you don't think she should be allowed to do it? You don't think it's ethical, but you think it should be legally protected?
Some things are made legal that are unethical, in my opinion. True. And should those be made illegal?
I mean, that's a very broad question, right?
No. I'm sorry. Personal use of methamphetamine is allowed. It's a civil citation, like a.
Personal use of methamphetamine. Wait, what? Oh, it might be. I'm sorry. So decriminalization in some states, but I'm pretty sure meth is still federally. It's a DEA controlled or scheduled substance, isn't it? Is meth federally controlled DEA schedule in Oregon? Yes. So methamphetamine is a Schedule 2 drug, okay? So you need a prescription. Well, can you get a prescription for Schedule 2 drugs? Some drugs that are scheduled, like Schedule 1 drugs, I believe you can't get prescriptions for because they have no recognized medical use. Schedule 1, 2, 3, Wikipedia. Let me check. Hold on. Okay, so Schedule 2 has some medical use with severe restrictions. Okay, so I'm guessing you can be prescribed Schedule 2 drugs, I believe.
Traffic ticket, not a criminal citation. So allowed maybe is hyperbolic. It is a civil citation to be caught using methamphetamine in Oregon. You get a ticket for it, but no crime.
So I just looked up the Born Alive Act, by the way. It says this bill is deliberately misleading and offensive to pregnant people and doctors and nurses who provide their care. It is another attempt by anti-abortion politicians to spread misinformation as a means to get a warped political end, to ban safe and legal abortion. It's an entry point to try and make abortion illegal.
Where did you read this?
Okay, well, no, hold on, no.
Yeah.
I don't care. I mean, who cares about the Born Alive Act? The question was, if an abortion happens but the baby survives, can you kill it? And Lance already said no. So we're done with that.
So he would, yeah, for sure.
So any other political arguments, anyone left, right, or otherwise trying to change that? No, it's irrelevant. Once the baby's born, it's a baby.
So it has the same rights as every other human at that point, right?
This is an American. This is an interesting. I think this falls in line with the idea of anarcho-tyranny that we were talking about. My view of the modern left is that their positions are nothing but chaos. There's no logical pathway towards preserving life, improving people's lives. It seems to be only it's like yin yang, right? There's one side that's talking about long-term planning, logical thinking, and improving the world, and one side that takes the inverse position no matter what. For instance, 25 people push in front of a subway, nobody bats an eye. One guy, three guys try to subdue a man, and now they.
Rosing's question. Answer my question. Wait, what? Oh my God. I agree, harm to a future person and killing the fetus is kind of different, but do you think not killing the fetus causes harm to a future person in a sense by depriving them of all possible future goods? Do you think not killing the fetus causes harm to a future person in a sense by depriving them of all possible future goods? Oh, do you not think killing the fetus causes harm to a future person in a sense? No, you can't cause harm to a non-existent person. If you kill a fetus, you're preventing a person from being created. So there's no harm to speak of because there's no person being harmed. There's nothing that we can't meaningfully speak of harm because there's not a subject being harmed. You're talking about a fictional person, a thing that doesn't exist and won't exist.
They want prison. That's like a weird inversion of what the law is supposed to do. The law should stop the people who are pushing people on the trains and protect the people on the train who are being victimized. But the left's position is the inverse of it, right?
Are you asking me for like an affirmation of that? Because if you ask me...
No, I'm just saying like that's my view.
So when you say the left's idea are all chaos, I mean, if you really wanted to boil down what the left is fighting for...
But how is that different from the meth case then? He meant if you allow abortion, can you argue you're helping the mom avoid... Wait, how is that different from the meth case then? If you intend to have a baby, doing meth is bad while pregnant because you're harming the person that you know is going to exist. There is going to be a person to speak about, right? It's like putting an anvil knowing that it's going to fall on somebody, but that person hasn't arrived yet, but you know they're going to arrive, right? It's bad because you intend to bring about a person that is going to be harmed, right? For an abortion, the person will never exist, so there's no person to speak of. That chatter believes a person is a fetus. You don't. Oh, if they do, that's a separate set of arguments then. What if you do meth when you have an abortion appointment for the next day, but then you don't go and have the baby 6 months later? Was doing the meth immoral? Yeah, there's probably some probabilistic chance, like hanging an anvil where there could be a person walking, but they don't. Sure.
Especially myself, it's expanding freedom.
Or they could.
I believe in freedom. I love freedom. I'm sure everyone here likes freedom too, right? You're all about freedom.
How do you define freedom exactly?
So for me, I believe in a democratic process where we don't have tyrants, we don't have dictators, we don't have kings or queens. We have the ability as a democracy to be able to vote for who we work for. Or sorry, who our leaders are, right? Like we want to be able to vote for our president.
He did a socialism meme. Vote for who we work for. He's thinking of a co-op.
Prime Minister. I believe in that fundamentally. But my other thing is I want to expand that freedom into the workplace because we spend about 8 hours a day every single day in our works, our jobs. I want to expand freedom there. So people who work at their jobs for 8 hours a day have the ability to vote for things in their lives, better health care, better working conditions, whether or not their boss is corrupt and stealing from all of them. I want to expand that. I want to expand
also,
freedom into other parts of life.
Ruling.
That's a fundamental belief.
So what do you mean by stealing from?
Are all against me.
Stealing wages, for example.
Like actually shorting someone's check and
so the largest form of theft in America right now is wage theft. If you look,
I think this. I'm still not buying this shit. I try to look up numbers on this. It just seems really weird how this is defined.
I sued. I went to the National Labor Board and we won.
How does it happen?
As you should. So there's a ton of
Not
ways.
paying overtime.
Not paying overtime. Bosses simply just garnishing checks or garnishing wages, stealing tips, or thinking that tips are justification to pay them lower salaries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
All of it bullshit. And when you look at theft, you look at the stats, right? Cars being stolen, jewelry, all that. Wage theft blows everything out. Like they're not even comparable. It's one down here, and then it's like the other one's fucking all the way up there.
I got a story for you. So I worked at a company. I get a paycheck. I'm good at math and stuff, and so I look at it and I'm like, "Hey, there's a problem with my paycheck." And they go, "No, it's good." And I'm like, "No, it isn't. There's a problem with my paycheck. Fix it." And I very quickly was like, $67 missing. I want it fixed, and I want it fixed now. And they went, "Give us a few minutes." Came back 15 minutes later, handed me a check. I looked at it and said, "Are you joking?" And they were like, "Huh?" And I was like, "This is wrong. I'm not an idiot. Fix my paycheck." Went to a couple other employees. I said, "Let me see your paychecks." I looked and I went, "Come with me." Walked right to the National Labor Board in Chicago and said, "This is what they did." They took our statements. We went to the company and we told them we were going to form a union because of what they had done. They fired us on the spot for doing it. We sued them. And then I'll give you air quotes in saying we won. What actually happened was after 6 months of being out of work, they said you can get retro pay, which will be $7,000 each, or we can go to fight and then they'll give you your job back. And I'm like, if they give us our job back, they're going to retaliate against us. No, that's illegal. And I was like, oh, come on. So we won the fight, but it really means they were able to fire us to stop us from forming a union.
So what would be a better example of expanding? Sorry, Seamus, you can say something.
No, I just want to make the point. I haven't seen the stats on wage theft causing more in losses than all other forms of theft combined. I'll just have to take your word for that, and I'm willing to grant that for the sake of this discussion.
True.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm willing to grant it if that is the case, and at the very least for the sake of argument. I certainly don't agree in involuntarily democratizing all workplaces. That's probably a much longer, interesting economic discussion. Happy to engage in it with you guys too. And I suspect we would all have different views on it. I don't know if you want to go to other issues or if you want to talk about that. I would like to talk about that.
As well.
Budweiser.
You're going to move to Bud?
Budweiser.
I do want to talk about LGBTQ+.
We got to do it.
So why I'm here.
And Budweiser opens that door. Ladies and gentlemen, the Anheuser-Busch CEO has finally disavowed the Dylan Mulvaney ad in private to investors, though he's not made a public statement. Sales are down 26%. They're going to be giving out free cases of beer to distributors. And
I thought I read something where the guy said that the sales were down 1%. What the fuck are the Lance got away from the meth question? Yeah. Where the fuck are we at for sales on Budweiser? I feel like I've read so many different things about this.
They've vowed to spend millions of dollars in marketing, but the boycott is particularly effective, I would say. And there's videos now coming out of people at sporting events where the Bud Light is just behind the counter totally full and everyone's buying other brands. So did Ian and Seamus both just leave at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know where they went, but they
ran
did just
for
both leave.
So let's jump into this. What are your thoughts on the Budweiser thing?
My thoughts are keep going. You're doing awesome. All of you. I mean this. To every single person protesting Bud Light, fuck yes. I am so here for this. It's fucking amazing.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
where's the catch, Lance? Your clever catch.
Budweiser sucks. Anheuser-Busch sucks. It's a massive multinational corporation.
They're super anti-LGBTQ+, so it's been beautiful to see. I love it. Oh, they donate so much to right-wing Republicans who push anti-LGBTQ laws. So Anheuser-Busch getting taken down. Oh, man. I'm so here for it. Keep going.
Me too. Absolutely. Yeah. They think that they can pay off Republicans. They can hire GOP aides. Right. And that is going to be satisfactory for their customers who are upset with them as a brand. So clearly what we can see, where I think we agree, is that Anheuser-Busch is a faceless corporation with no real values that is willing to spit in the faces of the little guy if it earns them a profit. They're a trash company and nobody should buy their products. The left and the right both agree. Here, here. Unity for once. I hope they fail.
Same thing with Disney. Keep going after Disney. I'm
Absolutely.
all for it. Take Disney down. I'm all for the right wing taking on Disney, all for the right wing taking on Anheuser-Busch. Yes, of course. These are terrible fucking corporations. I'm all here for it. By the way, the Daily Mail is like the #1 source on the show, right? Like every single time you pulled it up. Because that same site that you showed me, All Sides Media Bias, it has the Daily Mail on right wing. And I know that you yourself, when you pulled it up.
They're actually fantastic. Daily Mail.
But if you use them as a primary source, you understand why I'd say that. Like
we don't use them as a primary source.
Okay.
What happens is when we pull up stories, I'll go to like CNN, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Fox News, ABC, and they'll each have like 300 words. And then you go to the Daily Mail, after doing a search on key elements of the story, and the Daily Mail will have like 7 different versions of all breaking down different components. Okay. Like if you scroll down the Daily Mail, they often do these special sections where they have entirely different stories within the story, providing more context. Like for instance, this story from the Daily Mail not only talks about the current story with the CEO, but it even goes all the way into all of the context going back to the commercial that was released, the sale drop at 6% in the first week, to the video. It like covers literally even as a photo of the VP and her husband, how in-depth this story is. So it's like if I'm gonna pull up a single article, I can pull up 5 ABC, CBS, New York Times, or I can just pull up this one that has seemingly everything in it, including Kid Rock, including John Rich, including Bud Light being poured into a dumpster.
Yeah, so
it's a massive aggregator.
Yeah.
But honestly, I have no problem with y'all going after fucking Bud Light. Have a time, go nuts. I have a really big problem with what I feel on this show is a lot of anti-trans hysteria and fear-mongering that takes place.
You want to open that book?
I have that book at home. We can talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
And I'm totally comfortable talking about that book. I've read it.
Should it be in schools?
I want to talk to you about the trans issue, though, because
right, and that's why I ask about the book.
Okay,
it opens
we can get to the books and the schools, the curriculums, and everything that the Florida's taken away. But you profess to be kind of like fact-based, science-based, right?
Yeah.
Like you pull up. I've noticed you want to pull up stats and figures and stuff like that.
Of course.
Why is it that you push propaganda when it comes to trans people?
Like what?
That is so far beyond the pale.
Like what?
Okay, let's start with gender-affirming care.
Mm-hmm.
Gender-affirming care, you're very, very against. I've heard you call it mutilation.
I don't call it mutilation. I've never said that.
That's what you say on your show.
I do.
No, I don't.
I don't know if he does. I call it
I don't.
children.
Oh no.
I call it child sex change.
When you were talking about Dwayne Wade moving his family,
someone in the crowd said, "Why are you mutilating your son?" That was a quote from someone else. I didn't say that. I call it.
But then you made.
And I've explicitly said I don't take the right agitator approach of calling it mutilation because that's not effective in having a conversation. I will plainly call it a child sex change as what it is. I'm not going to call it gender affirming or mutilation because I don't think those things accurately explain what it is.
Okay, so when it comes to gender affirming care. 0 to about 10.
Are you talking about child sex change?
No, I'm talking about gender affirming care. 0 to about 10 years old.
You got to define it.
The answer is yes.
You got to define it, okay? Because if you're talking about something different, tell us what you're talking about.
All right, so if someone is trans and they're young, and until they're about 10 years old before they go through puberty, gender affirming care would be in the form of you using different pronouns, preferred pronouns, and allowing them to dress differently.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Do you have a problem with that? Does anyone here?
This is called social transitioning.
Yes, I do.
I don't.
Okay, so both of you don't.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so do you accept that there is no surgery being performed on children at that age, from 0 to about 10? There's nothing. There's no hormone blockers. There's no puberty blockers.
There is hormone blockers. I don't think surgery is happening on kids under 12.
So hormone blockers aren't given to children until they go through puberty.
That's not true. We actually pulled this up with Destiny. He actually called me out. I was wrong about a stat.
Okay.
What we found was 47,000.
He was wrong about that stat, by the way. Also, oh no, Lance is about to do the thing that he tweeted about and got dunked on, where Lance was trying to say puberty blockers are only given to people like after puberty or some shit. Oh no, he's not about to do this dance, is he?
Cross-sex hormones, I think it was something like 17,000 puberty blockers and like 2,000 double mastectomies for girls after the age of 13 or whatever. But
so that doesn't apply to anything I just said.
Puberty blockers were preteen. Puberty blockers.
Yes, puberty blockers.
They have to give them the puberty blockers before puberty starts.
Yes, of course.
Right.
So you. Okay, so you're just reaffirming what I just said. From 0 to 10 till you're about to go through puberty, gender affirming care only comes in the form of using different pronouns, using different names, allowing them to dress differently, and that's it. And you don't have a problem with that.
Wait, Lupron too?
Okay, so we'll get to Lupron, but up to that point, you don't have a problem with any of this yet, right?
I'm saying,
and you agree that there is no surgery being performed on children at that age. 0 to 10.
Let me just start from the beginning so I can make sure I'm getting what you're saying right.
Yeah.
I don't care if parents call their kids names or whatever. I care about medical or surgical intervention.
Okay, so that doesn't happen until about the age of about 16. That's the average age for.
But you're wrong. Okay, like and look, we had Destiny on the show. We went into great detail about it. There are girls who are 13 who are getting this done, and there was a study. Actually, it was Canadian, I believe. 12 to 17, they had several hundred surgeries performed.
Okay, so again, I said the average age, but if you want to say that there are people who get this at 12, that could be the case.
Who would have it? I think
let's start with puberty blockers, Tim. Mm-hmm. Lupron. You both have a big problem with Lupron?
I don't know a lot about it, but I consider it a medical treatment.
Okay. Yeah, we shouldn't be giving Lupron to kids.
So you don't think you should give Lupron to kids? Why don't you want Lupron be given to trans kids?
Because it's a puberty blocker that inhibits the natural function and development of their body. And more importantly, I think my view is built upon what we've seen out of Europe already, right? So earlier on, maybe a few years ago, I was more agnostic on the issue until Sweden, Denmark, Finland abandoned this and the Tavistock Center got shut down. And the data they released said this actually caused more harm than good. And then I was like, well, okay, hey, how about that? And for some reason in the United States, they're still hell-bent on moving forward with what we can already see from, better countries with better healthcare systems saying no to this, right?
Okay, so I can address those individually because I have the explanation as to why that happened. When it comes to Lupron, 0 to 10 is about the age where gender-affirming care only comes in the form of different names, pronouns, stuff like that. We can all agree that's completely fine.
We can't. I disagree. I disagree. You three can agree, but I don't.
Fine. Okay, fine. But it's their show, so I just want to concentrate on
my position is more just like, I don't know, man, like social therapy stuff. They say that after puberty, desistance.
This is the one where this is how I'm saying Lance is winding up some trouble because like Tim is probably kind of pretty libertarian, and this is probably where Tim is going to break from a lot of like Republicans, and that Tim probably doesn't give a fuck if kids go by different pronouns or use different names as much. Is going to be my guess because he's more concerned with like medical stuff, but otherwise he's not going to give as much a fuck about like pronouns and social transition and shit because he's more libertarian, and other conservatives are going to disagree with him probably in general.
Rates are between 65 and like 92%.
Okay, so that's completely false. I'll get to that. We have to do this.
Come on, bro.
We have to do this piece by piece first. Okay. Oh, let's get through Lupron.
Hey,
first.
I just proved you wrong. Studies show 10 follow-up studies found desistance of 61 to 98%.
Yeah. Can you click on the Wikipedia article? Detransition topics.
Oh, you're missing the mic. Can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Missing the mic, buddy.
What are the studies? Where are we talking about? I would like to know if you are taking these studies specific. Well, because I have each one of them written down here, and I'm quite curious. Is the Drummond study one of them? Is the Wallen study? Is Stensma, the Swedish study, a part of this? The 2011 study?
Probably. I don't know.
Well, we should know. This is incredibly important for what we're talking about.
It's not. This is 2018. This is Gender Dysphoria in Adolescents, Current Perspectives in the National Library of Medicine.
Okay, scroll down to the conclusion of this one. Just
want to get the mic again.
Oh, sorry.
You can carry it around.
Yeah. Move it. I gotta get used to this.
Yeah, dog.
Fuck it. You could take the mic home with you.
Oh. I know. Scroll down to the conclusion of the study.
Well, yeah. I mean, I want to at least skim some of the what the numbers and reference are to like the reference.
While you're skimming, when I think of a little kid
like
being
outcomes,
like a little boy being like
disorders.
I'm a girl. The parent, I would hope that the parent would be like, you can pretend to be whatever you want. You can be an actor. You can play a girl. But I get afraid when a mom's like, he said he's a girl. That means he's trans.
Right. So for this, it's not a process. It doesn't exist in which someone can say, hey, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, and then they go into a doctor's office and like, well, take some Lupron. It's you do years and years of consultation between a doctor and between like a therapist and between the patient itself.
I'm just going to read this.
Sure, of course.
Adolescence is a crucial time for identity and psychosexual development in young people with gender identity concerns. The outcomes of GDC have been discussed in terms of its persistence and desistance. For most children with GDC, whether GD will persist or desist will probably be determined between the ages of 10 and 13 years, although some may need more time. Evidence from the 10 available prospective follow-up studies from childhood to adolescence, reviewed in the study by Ristori and Steensma, indicate that for around
it is Steensma. I was right. I asked if this was Steensma. Okay, I can answer this
80% of children who meet the criteria for GDC.
Right.
But you said 2011.
Oh, so there's multiple Steensma studies. They've actually built upon each other. And the problem with the Steensma study, unfortunately, is that they actually categorized people who were not trans in that study. They didn't compare people who were trans to people who were trans and then detransitioned. They compared people in the general population.
What's your source? What's your source for that?
The actual author of the study has come out since and said that. What can
I pull up to confirm that?
Okay.
Like, because look, I pulled up a study that said a thing. You've made a counterclaim. I will pull it up.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so go to.
Because I don't know who Steensma is.
Okay, so, Steensma, and the problem, I'll say one more thing because I had this written down. 45.3% of the people did not reapply for treatment. They counted that as people who were detransitioning when they weren't, in fact, doing that.
Wait, so can I ask you something?
Yes, okay, so he asked for the source. Let's do things in order.
I'm going to respond to what you just said. I need to respond to what you just said right now.
That last point is kind of important to respond to.
Okay. We're literally talking about desistance.
Right.
If they're including people who desisted, you'd have to get the number of those who desisted.
They included people who did not reapply for treatment. They counted that as someone who was desisting. That's just someone who didn't show up again.
That's literal desistance.
No, it's not.
That's literal desistance.
Not whatsoever, Tim. That is someone who has decided they just don't want to go talk to that doctor or experience things with that doctor. They could have gone off to a different doctor. They could have done something else. But that is not someone who has verifiably said, I was trans, I'm no longer trans. So, that's just people who did not show up.
Your thing.
Okay, so go to transadvocate.com/.
I'm not going to I need a study or something, not an advocacy website.
Okay,
I pulled up a scientific study for you. I'm not pulling up a nonprofit
Good job.
advocacy
So
group.
this is an interview with the person who did the study in this article.
I have pulled up a scientific study for you.
And the person who did, and I'm challenging you with the person who did the fucking study. And
you're telling me to pull up an advocacy website, which is not on par with a scientific study.
But it's featuring the person who did the scientific
study. Is there
a
counter study saying this is not correct?
Okay, yes, an overwhelming amount. Okay, sure.
Let me pull that up.
Okay.
Look, if I pull up the NIH,
sure,
and then you say go to transadvocate.com, you understand why I'm not going to do this.
Cool. Cornell University.
I'm not going to Breitbart for my source.
He shouldn't let him. He shouldn't let him get away from this. People make this mistake all the time. I noticed it when I was trying to trigger people on Twitter. Oh no, actually no. This one I was being serious on Twitter over like divorce stuff. People will say things like, "Oh, I don't trust you. Your source is the Guardian for this study." The Guardian can never be the source for a study. It doesn't make sense. The Guardian is a publication. The Guardian is probably referencing a study, right? This idea that like, I'm not going to go to trans advocacy and take their word for it. You shouldn't. I agree with you. You shouldn't. But if they're sourcing the author of the study, you're not relying on trans advocacy. You're relying on an interview with the author of the study.
It's on desistance, okay?
Sounds good. Cornell University did a meta-study.
What is it?
Okay, Cornell University did a meta-study on 55 different studies. Just start looking up Cornell University meta-study on detransition. Cornell University did a meta-study on 55 different studies on detransitioning. Of those 55, they found 52 of the studies showed that people detransitioned at a rate of less than 4%. And of those people who did it, the reason they detransitioned was social stigma. That's 52 of the 55. The other 3 of those 55, they didn't show a net negative effect. There was not a single study of the 55 that Cornell University looked at that showed detransitioning or gender affirming care being a bad thing for trans people. If anything, it was a net positive. This is a meta-study of a whole bunch of studies. I have another meta-study.
So wait, but hold on.
I'm trying to pull up a scientific study to confirm what you're saying.
Yeah, I also just want to ask a question about this too.
Sure.
So you're mentioning that this is a meta-analysis of studies on people who have detransitioned, but by definition, right, this is taking into account people who went through, puberty blockers, hormone replacement therapy, physical surgeries?
Sure, for each study it was different things. In some of the studies, it was people who were going through puberty blockers, some had hormone therapy, but a lot of them in one form or another had received gender-affirming care. They were trans when the study first tried to identify these people, and then it looked at them years later.
And how is this sample collected? Because almost every single issue or almost every single
study I've
study
medical transition for minors is currently a losing political strategy, especially when communicating trans issues to normies isn't going well. Many older liberals, while empathetic, don't understand a lot of it.
Yeah, it probably is. Something that Lance should point out here is these guys are very, very, very interested right now in all of the hyper-specific details of how these studies were conducted and what, but they didn't really seem to care that much earlier when Tim brought up the study. You notice that? Notice that they were very, very, very concerned about all these things before, or they weren't concerned at all about these things before. Now they've turned into like hyper scientists. You notice that conservatives, everybody will do that to be fair. But like, yeah, they had like, oh, Tim says that they did this study and 99% of people detransition. Oh, cool. Well, here actually meta-analysis by Cornell University. Oh, well, hold on, whoa. What's the methodology? Who were the researchers? Was there a conflict of interest? Can we dig into the conclusions? What were the abstracts? Did we do the research? Like, it's like, okay.
Seen from trans advocates on this issue use a convenience sample rather than doing some kind of controlled randomized test for the treatment.
So this is a meta-study of a whole bunch of other studies.
Okay.
So you would have to go between each study, because at the end of the day, I don't want to fall in this trap that me and Tim were about to do, where each of us starts saying like, well, I have a study, well, you have a study, well, I have a study. We could do this all day. So we should look at metadata, right? We should look at compromising data that looks over a whole bunch of studies. A second metadata study that I want you to look at, regret after gender-affirming surgery, a systematic review and meta-analysis of prevalence. This went to Canada, the Netherlands, Belgium, from UK, Italy, USA, Brazil, Sweden, Singapore, Germany, Norway, Ireland, Serbia, and an interview between 27 studies, 7,928 trans patients. It showed a less than 1% regret rate.
So also, can I also mention something? Desistance and deposition.
I have another meta-study.
Okay, I got to address this right now. There is a problem we are facing in that you are saying a lot of things, and I can't pull up any sources. At the very least, all I did was Google searched it. I pulled up the 2 studies that were associated with it and said, here's what it says. I have not given you my personal perspective on it. You've now given me your personal view on it.
No, I've given you the studies. These are 2 meta-studies. I have a third meta-study.
What are the studies? Let me please pull them up. I can't find what you're talking about.
The first one is Cornell University. They did a meta-study
What's the name of it?
It's Cornell University's meta-study of 72 studies on gender-affirming.
There's going to be a name to this paper. There's going to be if you want to cite papers, especially because you're prepared, just be prepared to cite the paper and the authors. All you need to do are paper and the authors. So it might be called we could probably find what he's talking about. Meta-analysis, Cornell, trans, desistance. Oh wait, this isn't actually. Is this actually a peer-reviewed? Is this published anywhere, or? We conducted a systematic literature review of all peer-reviewed articles published in English. Control F submitted. Control F peer. Control F journal. Okay, well, oof. Tim Pool probably doesn't know, but so technically. This isn't a peer-reviewed study. It doesn't seem like it. Now, not to say that Cornell is bullshit, but that's why. Oh, actually, maybe Lance knows this. Maybe Lance knows this, and this is why he's dancing around it. This is not a peer-reviewed published study. This is a school doing a systematic literature review, right? So, also a literature review. Oh, dude, I feel like I'm being so needlessly pedantic. A literature review is not a meta-analysis. He said it's a meta-analysis. That's not technically true. Do they say it's a meta-analysis? I don't believe so, because it's not, because they say literature review. Okay, real quick, let me explain this. I don't even know if I'm gonna get this right, okay? So a literature review would be I think it's me taking 10 different studies, and then I assess the validity of these studies, and I kind of weight them, and I say, okay, here's where the research is, and this is my opinion on, when I take into account all these different studies, this is kind of where I think the science is. That's like a literature review. You're essentially doing a review of the literature, right? A meta-analysis is, here's 15 different studies with different data sets, and I'm gonna find a way to get all of these data sets into kind of making a larger data set by getting the data to work by merging or by omitting certain data or conforming certain data or whatever. And now I'm gonna basically create a larger data set, and I think I'm gonna treat this whole data set as one, and that's a meta-analysis. So I'm correct me if I'm wrong in that, but I think that's between a meta-analysis and a literature review. A systematic literature review is nice. I think a meta-analysis is typically more stringent because you're trying really hard to make all of the data commensurate with all the other data. If I have a researcher here, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong about this. Where did you learn this? I'm gonna be honest. I got a degree from the University of Wikipedia. The meta-analysis still needs to be peer-reviewed? No, wrong. Nothing needs to be peer-reviewed. Peer review is just if you choose to submit any research to a journal, then you can have a board of people that will review it to assess the integrity of your data, blah, blah, blah. Nothing technically needs to be. You can do all the studies you want that aren't peer reviewed. Now, typically when we say a study, we usually imply that it's peer reviewed, but nothing needs to be. But you can have a literature review that's peer reviewed, and you can have a meta-analysis. So you can have a systematic literature review that's peer reviewed. You can also have a meta-analysis that's peer reviewed. Anything can be peer reviewed, but a meta-analysis is just very, very, very complicated. Like I said, a literature review is going to be I've got 10 different studies and I'm kind of assessing and comparing and blah, 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 and I give you my opinion. But a meta-analysis is I'm going to try really, really, really hard to take these relatively dissimilar data sets, and I'm going to try to take all of the data and make it fit into one table so that I've got a larger sample size and I can draw some conclusions about it. But there's the selection process and criteria and everything you have to do for meta-analysis it's a far more complicated procedure, is my understanding of it. Yeah. Link the proof. What? I took that screenshot from that page. It was peer reviewed. Oh, he's trolling, you fucking retard. I can't believe you just told me. I can't believe you just told me to go stalk this guy to check his shit. Who did this, you moron? Destiny, LS, link the proof of it being peer reviewed. Shut the, you're so stupid. Yourself. A meta-analysis are notoriously dog shit? Not necessarily. Meta-analysis are good or bad depending on the strength of the meta-analysis, right? They can be bad, they can be good, but that's true of any study, right? Okay. Damn, fuck. I thought that Lance had a legitimate own here, but now I don't think he has a legitimate own here. He just has like a semantic or a rhetorical own because Tim doesn't know how to navigate research because none of these guys probably look up studies. A literature review is just part of the research process for deciding where you're going to study more, but that's it. Sure, but you don't necessarily have to either. You can do like a literature review. I think normally, I'm trying to think of literature reviews that normally when a literature review is done, I feel like there's normally an assessment at the end where they're like, this is cause for further, like so far the literature says this, it seems as though this is cause for further investigation. I feel like generally that's what I see at the end of like a lit review. Whereas a meta-analysis is usually, I think a meta-analysis is usually trying to make a more firm conclusion. A meta-analysis is trying to say, we have compiled this much data from this many different sets, we've created a larger table, this is what we think, we feel pretty strongly about this. Whereas, yeah, actually, I think you are right. A literature review is normally a point for like, this is where the literature seems to be at right now, maybe we should blah, 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 blah. A systematic review, a systematic review, I think is what I call it, is better. Can I
explain the differences between these?
Yeah, if you want to go for it quick.
Yeah, real quick. Okay, so there's two types of reviews. There's narrative reviews and there's systematic reviews. Narrative reviews are less rigorous than systematic reviews. Systematic reviews, you usually have to pre-register some sort of protocol or at least follow certain guidelines. You do have to have an inclusion and exclusion criteria for the studies you choose. What's different between the rigorous systematic literature review and a meta-analysis is that meta-analyses contain meta-analytic summations. Meta-analytic summations are just some way of pooling data points from different studies into one common point, usually with some confidence interval.
Mm-hmm. You're actually trying to like test against like some hypothesis as well in like a larger created data set or something, I'm imagining, right?
Yeah, so what's trying to be done there is you're trying to get a common point from all these different studies. You're saying, okay, the net of all of these different data points, they summate out to this.
Yeah.
And you can hypothesize test with that as well. You could say, well, after we pool everything and we get our confidence interval, would that be statistically significantly different from the referent or something?
Sure.
Yeah. So that's the main difference between
whereas
meta
like
and
a literature review will never be able to, I don't think, concretely point. I think it just kind of like
They don't test. The literature reviews do not pool data points from different study sets into one common point. That's what a meta-analytic summation.
Yeah. Abby, you got to fix your mic, dude. Holy shit.
This debate gave me so many thoughts. I don't know if I have to do all of them, but did you cover the abortion bit already?
Yeah, Jesus.
What do you guys think? Do you guys think like 8 months is like a viable point in time for like a baby?
Yeah. This is the, I always tell this to every leftist, my body, my choice is the most retarded argument for pregnancy in the history of mankind. If you're really going to defend the my body, my choice thing, you need to be like very like philosophically literate because you're going to have to answer a lot of really fucking tough questions. Because when you say my body, my choice, you're conceding that you're murdering a child, but you're saying that the autonomy of the mother is so worth defending that you should be able to murder that child for it. It's a very, very, very like esoteric position. Like most Americans aren't going to buy this. Even most Democrats aren't in favor of third trimester abortions. It's just a dog shit argument. There are other ways to argue pro-choice, I think. Or just cede it and say, nah, we probably shouldn't have third trimester abortion. It's such a horrible argument to ever try to take, I think.
Is it not the case, though, that, like, my body, my choice, I always thought it was supposed to justify, like, abortions before viability? Because, you know, like that fucking philosophy tube video where the violinist gets kidnapped and then they're wired to them and they have to decide, are you allowed to cut yourself off?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the person who wrote that essay right at the end even says, like, you only have a right to disconnect yourself from like a viable
okay,
fetus.
yeah, good job,
like,
bro. Yeah, you watch Destiny streams. Okay, we get it. Okay.
What?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's Judith Johnson's paper.
Okay.
I brought this up earlier that, yeah, if you read her paper, she makes a very clear distinction that the right to an abortion is not the right to murder a child, that's just an incidental thing that happens. They're not one and the same. So if you are aborting a child that is viable, there isn't probably some obligation to protect that child's life. You can't just say, you can't just say like, oh, we delivered a 9-month baby, now we're going to kill it. That's insane, right?
So that just means that like once the baby's viable, and then you have to get rid of it for whatever reason. Like you have to just like C-section or induced labor or whatever the fuck, right? Is that like the ethical position there?
But yeah, potentially, yeah.
So I had some anecdotes about late-term abortions that I was really curious about. One, I think, was someone who had like chronic medical conditions, and the treatment for that condition gave them symptoms that were, a lot of which were associated with pregnancy. So they had a irregular menstrual period, they had like their weight fluctuated, they were sick, they threw up a lot. So they didn't know they were pregnant until 26 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I think the fetus was viable. But like at that point, does she not have a right to abort if she doesn't want the baby, even if she couldn't know that she was pregnant until 26 weeks? Or does she just have to, like, whatever the thing is, C-section?
Oof. It's going to be an edge case, but I think on the side of the public, I think you never really abort third trimester babies. It's just like they look like babies. That's a really, really, really rough position to defend, I think. Yeah. You say like it sucks, but that's like it's pretty rare that can happen. But some women really don't show. Like I've heard stories of women. I used to think this was bullshit when I was younger. Like, there's no way you're 5 or 6 months pregnant, you don't know. But there are some women that like barely show until they're like at month like 6, 7, 8. It's like insane. So, but I guess sometimes you just get really unlucky. But I mean, maybe you can make, if they're having like weird medical things, maybe you can make a medical argument for it. But I'm not even talking fatties, by the way. I'm just saying like normal thin women that you would never guess were pregnant, like 4 or 5 months pregnant. It's like insane. But sorry, are we done? Are we good? Anybody else? I don't know if I'm gonna finish this video tonight, and you all jumped in, so.
What meta study on?
I just want to flag that desistance and detransitioning are two different things.
Right.
Well.
Look up
Cornell University.
Cornell University. What does scholarly research say about the effect of gender transition or on gender trans well-being?
Oh, here we go. I found it.
Nice. And the third meta study that I want to bring up is a U.S. study. It's a 2015 U.S. transgender study.
But this isn't a scientific research paper that's peer reviewed.
Oh no! Tim Pool looked it up and got him. He found the Cornell thing. Uh-oh. Lance shouldn't have presented it this way. It's probably okay for Lance to say Cornell did a systematic literature review. It's probably okay for Lance to say that, but he misrepresented it as a study, and now he's like, ugh, we'll see what he does in this one. Oh boy, what do you want? What's up?
Hey, I was just watching the Sneeko video you uploaded where he was kind of moving away from red pill stuff, and you got into talking about vasectomies.